Hi, my name is Bob Greenyer, and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. So welcome this O-Day, bursting the disclosure bubble. How are we all on this last Sunday, 30th of November, 2025? How are we all? Hello, First Sword, 06F. Hello, Chalxus. Hello, Just a Guy and a Donkey. Hi, Gordon Doherty. Sorry to keep you waiting. I know you need your beauty sleep. Hi, Corky Goss. Hi, S-Can. Hi, Mika Avila. Hi, Athena Mac. We have Joseph Collar in the house. Welcome, Joseph. Wonderful to have you here. Hi, Ken Pratt also. And Stephen F. Estonias. All over the world. Look at that. Lovely. So, first up, there's some news. We like news. What news, you say? What news? Well, this news. I can report today that Chisov's accelerating body bending of light in the form of a laser beam, that is to say gravity distortion, both positive and negative, has been replicated by Paul Harris in British Columbia, Canada. Yay to Canada! Can't say I'm not jealous, but the next step is to see if we can do the yin-yang structure and to see that if those are spun up, that it continues to deflect after they've reached their terminal velocity. Anyway, absolutely freaking awesome. Well done to Paul Harris for the first person. Now, he said it. I've asked him to video it. Let's see who can get the first video of the replication done. I had no doubt that someone as respected as Chisov was not making things up. So that is good, and it supports the hypothesis that cavitation does indeed produce gravity and anti-gravity waves, and that is yin and yang respectively in the form of increasing and decreasing the density of matter. So yes, very, very good news, Mela Fury. Thank you for joining us. Secondly, Griffin Brock's Tesla shadowgraph experiment has been partially replicated with Jan Rak in Prague. And you can see it here. This is the tube's behind the screen here. And we can see us doing some shadowgraphs right there. Now we need to condition the tube, and we need to get a better chamber and a better camera. But this is very, very good news. What we did find is it does diffuse. It's not co-limited, at least in our experiment. And we raised that point with Griffin on our last meeting, which was a few days ago. And he said that, yes, I need to put a Helmholtz coil over the apparatus in order to focus the beam. So this is rather exciting that we can do that. Of course, I've still got to share the remediation data from my experiments there, which are absolutely mind-blowing, and that will happen. So lots and lots of more experiments to do with the Griffin-Brock Tesla shadowgraph experiment. And then we have major replications of key Vega experiments underway, also in the Prague laboratory. And that will start with the so-called tungsten chop shop. My belief is that that tungsten chop shop experiment is just one, very, very simple. Two, it shows that the non-radiating boundary, that is the ball of our plasma balls, our ball lightning that we synthesize, that is the place on which it cuts in that double layer, so-called. And then it also shows the phase coherence of a macro system that, in my view, is like the Wisniewski organization of electrons into Cooper pairs, which leads to the intense topological monopole, which does all of the magic. Of course, you need a toroidal moment to get that started, because you need the toroidal moment's phase singularity to initiate the magnetic nucleation. Okay. So that is freaking awesome. So we will be going through a series of experiments, repeating them, and what you'll see with Jan's system that he's put together there with all of his colleagues, Kuba and others there in Prague, is it is instrumented with power, frequency, gas pressures, everything. And we want to get cameras on there, we want to get spectrometers on there, so that when we do these replications of these particular effects that we observed by David Boutlier and Henk Uren, that we know the chamber, the specifications for the chamber, the specifications and bill of materials for all of the material and equipment that produced that, and the parameter space under which that effect was produced. Because all of the understanding that is necessary to understand what we're going to talk about today was derived from principally 4 experiments. The tungsten chop shop, possibly the Evo blaster as well. The Vega Valley, of course, incredibly important experiment to learn about fluidized electrons and their flows and the magnetic fluid patterns that it produced in that Vega Valley. The cardioid infarction, which is the macro ball lightning, that showed the flux loop and the wormhole and the magnetohydrodynamic structure that drives it all. And lastly, the 15mm ball lightning cut that shows the scalloped areas on the cut line. And just outside that, the various 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 7, and not 7, we didn't find a 7, but 6 and 8 fractals in structures on there, and the churned areas. So those 4 experiments, we're intending to fully document and write papers on them with a view to getting wider replication and understanding of the overall underlying process, which is, in my view, completely what is driving everything we see in the so-called disclosure. Okay. And then lastly, but not leastly, my good friend and colleague and co-director of the project, Alan Goldwater. Thank you very much, Black Tie, for that £10. Very, very appreciated. Alan Goldwater, he has commenced a replication with the assistance of Dr. Edmund Storms, formerly of Los Alamos National Laboratory. He's now nearly 94 and a half years old, and he will be representing the MFMP in California, US, and I will be joining him there at some point to do some work on that particular replication. Okay, so, but the subject of tonight really is the bursting of this so-called disclosure bubble, because as I said, I think it was last time, on March the 1st, 2017, I spoke into the camera and I made it clear last week, although I've done it in many private conversations with family and stuff over the years, that I was referring very specifically to Hal Puthoff, the US Naval Labs and other parties that clearly understood aspects of this technology, and I wanted them to come clean and get these things out. But it's getting a little bit tedious. I do think there is some good intent there, but as we'll see tonight, the very exact words that were chosen in the so-called age of what I call narrative disclosure, it implies that you're not going to get to these technologies, even the ones that they're willing to release, in a fashion that's going to materially affect your lives. It's going to benefit someone, and it's going to make the environment cleaner. The old let's replace the coal-burning power stations with zero-point energy technology, but just still charge everyone the same. So it's not going to be benefiting you, it's going to be benefiting them. Okay, so first off, I will talk about the closing slide, and this isn't it, but it was of the first 1/3 of slides on O-Day presentations that I wrote in late 2017 into early January 2018. I shared about 1/3 of those slides in the Cold Nuclear Transmutation and Ball Lightning Conference in Sochi in Russia on October the 4th, 2018. And you can go and see that presentation. It's called Seek and Share. And in that presentation, right at the end, when I'd gone through the derivation of why I believed there was going to be a fractal toroidal geometry or a fractal geometry involved, I specifically chose this example to say why. And for those that don't know, before this happened, I had planned to have this very symbol on my wedding ring. And of course, back then we didn't have the data. So it's kind of like it was demonstrating remote viewing. You can believe that. You can choose to believe that whether you like to or not. That's your choice. But anyway, on the 16th of November in 1974, people like Carl Sagan and others composed this message to talk about the elements that are in our bodies and the fact that we've got a double helix and big body, small head, and we're on the third rock from the sun, and these are the number of planets in our solar system, and so on. And we used a radar dish, and the frequency is down here. Well, on the 13th of August 2000, this symbol appeared next to, I think, what was at one point, if not even then, the largest movable radio telescope in the world, which was at the Chilbolton Observatory in the UK. You can go and see these crop circles here at this fantastic site called temporarytemples.co.uk, crop circles, 2000 crop circles. And I think a good proportion of the crop circles in the period 2000 to 2002 were really trying to show this technology. I don't know why they chose 2000 to 2002, but maybe you can have an idea. But they desperately felt it was necessary to get these understanding out. Of course, as you well know, after my father showed me a series of 4 ball lightning-like structures in my family in 1979, in the late summer 1979, a few years later, he decided to take me in 1985 to go and see a crop circle on the long furlong. And I've spoken about that in the past. It's only very recently that I found out that the same structure is on the top of the altar in the Templars' underground ceremonial halls in Austria. And that this effectively is a 4-4 structure of this sacred geometry structure, and it is the first time that the technology comes under control. Of course, 1985 was before you started to get the fakers in crop circles, and also before even W.C. Levengood did his fantastic work and realized it was electrostatic effects, and that if you judiciously applied these to seeds, you could get them to grow faster and stronger and healthier. The system that he produced was exactly producing charge clusters, so go figure. Of course, if you exposed seeds at the wrong time in their growth cycle, you damage their ability to produce good grain. And this is the same kind of thing that's going on when it's melting people's skin off and damaging them. It's the same kind of effects that's going on. It's this torsion and electrostatics that get produced. Okay, so yes, this is the response to humanity's Arecibo message. Arecibo telescope, unfortunately, is now deconstructed. You can go and look it up, what it used to look like. It was, I think, used in a Bond movie, think like Moonraker or something. Anyway, it was quite a spectacular structure. Anyway, there's better telescope technologies where you use other telescopes that are spread further apart on the planet, and then you combine their signals and offsets, and you can effectively end up with much larger virtual telescopes than just having one larger telescope. So that's kind of why that went to the, to the side. Anyway, so you can see that it has a Ra symbol, the symbol of the sun and gold, and also, in my view, the toroidal current loop and the vector. So you've got a magnetic loop here, and you've got a magnetic vector orthogonally through the center, through the azimuth. And that is the base structure. And then you fractally build this. The minimum fractal has to be a 2-order structure. This tends to be what water produces. And this is what we have seen also in Griffin-Brock's electrode, although it was 2 on the large scale. It was 3 on the next subfractal down, similar to one of the structures we saw on the cavitation plate of Dr. Roishin Amasa in Japan. Okay, so yeah, they sent back a reply. Here is supposedly the reply. And down the bottom where we had our communication telescope information as a radio telescope, they showed this fractal toroidal geometry. And so this led me to believe that because of the time delay and so on, that if this is true, that, you know, this is old ways of communication through electromagnetic waves, this is communication, in my view, into the Akashic record, into the ether. And so this would be instantaneous. This would not be instantaneous. The curious thing here is when you do the maths for the telescope to have sent a message out from 1974 and for us to have this answer back in 2000, this is not enough time to get to many other places in the galaxy, let alone into other galaxies. However, you know, if you're going at 0.8 the speed of light with a bit of speed up and slow down, you can get to Alpha Centauri in 6 years. So there's definitely 6 years between here. So maybe there are some other solar systems that could have received this message and then sent back or engineered a probe using scalar interferometry to produce a probe to write down this message on this crop circle, or to send a message to people that should do. Or this could be people that know the technology, that I'm saying my father is not an alien in my view, and I think he was showing a synthetic ball lightning like structure that was produced above Shoreham Aerodrome, the world's oldest purpose-built airfield, in 1979, and that similar technology was used to produce the crop circle that he chose to make sure that I saw in 1985. Okay, so yeah, this is the thing here, but the story didn't really stop here, because the following year there was another message which captured the world's attention, and this was in Sparsholt near Winchester, Hampshire, on the 15th of August 2002. And again, it is near this communication outfit here, where you've got at least 3 communication towers in this particular shot, with lots of microwave transmitters, loads of them, really fairly high-powered ones on here. This doesn't seem to have much on it, but it might have some other form of radio transmission here. And then you've got another tower down here. So there may be others around. However, you've got this kind of like big eyes, small mouth, big head kind of alien that kind of fits the reply that they gave, which was small body, big head, or so-called reply. And then there's this disc. Of course, compact discs at the time were something people knew about. And, you know, it's got a spiral encoded information that comes from the outside in. And, of course, people at the time were using ASCII, and someone worked out the message that this gave. There's a little bit of confusion or something right on the end. But down here it says, "Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. Believe. There is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing or closed." So there's a bit of confusion on the ASCII. It gets a bit difficult to see right in the center of there. But the other thing that's interesting about this message is that they chose to construct it in a vortex. That is to say, coming into what I would argue is a phase singularity right in the center, where the full stop is. This is, in my view, a message within the message that no one else has talked about. Of course, the idea of deception is in the Bible and several times, and it refers to the Antichrist using understanding and deceiving the masses and to keep them away from Christ understanding. So I don't know if that's going on, but certainly whoever wrote this, if this is to be believed, and given the fact that it looks like it's in context, I think when the this smaller one was done in 2001, there was a kind of an alien head off to the side. You can go and check that on the 2001 pages of temporarytemples.co.uk. So it was kind of a 3-4. In August 13th, 2000, there was this one on its own. Then on the 20th of August, almost exactly 1 year later, 2001, just a couple of weeks before an event that we all know about, they put this message showing that this was definitely the communication method. They're implying that it's the communication method. And so-called like an alien head off to one side, and then this had an alien head and this vortex down to what I would argue is a phase singularity, showing the message. So no one's ever discussed this as being, in my view, a phase singularity vortex representation, but I believe that is what it's trying to get across there. Yeah, so I think these three images are linked and they're all part of one message. But again, I would urge people to go and look at the temporarytemples.co.uk site, particularly for the periods summer 2000 to 2002. There seems to be a lot of very relevant activity that puts up to what's going on. Someone says, much pain when? Well, I think we've had a lot of pain. We've had a lot of people dying, millions of people dying over the world in ill-advised military adventures. And that has resulted right now in massive problems for economies because of the money that was spent in killing people. It has mean that people have taxation and burdens on their life and lower benefits, and that breeds distrust and problems in communities around the world. And yeah, it's just a terrible amount of pain that we've gone through, along with the so-called fake thing that happened. New data is pointing out that people in nursing homes were, let's say, offed, and that was the basis for the fear campaign that was run by the psychological operations in the UK in recent years. And it was my brother that told me in 2020 that that's what was happening. They were literally killing people in nursing homes. But the data is now proving that categorically. And something like 43,000 in 2020 and a little less in 2021. So this was even before any jabs came onto the scene. They had to paint a picture. And so that is deception of the highest order. So, lots of deception. I would argue that shortly after the 20th of August 2001, there was a monumental deception that occurred, and that was the result for the pain, much of the pain and that has come since. But I think we can fix this as a global community of humans, trusting in the good that is out there, not the deceivers. Okay. All right. So in the age of narrative disclosure, there was this whole section about the science of what they were talking about. And these were the people that they were calling our scientists. So Lou Elizondo were saying, for decades, our government assumed there must be different exotic technologies responsible for each of the observables. But our scientists realized one breakthrough technology could actually be responsible for anything. Well, if you go and look at my 1st of March 2017 presentation, I'm not one of their scientists, but I literally listed the things that this technology would be able to do. One simple technology. So well done them. Well done them. Yeah. Okay, so we have Hal Puthoff, PhD. As I said, I think he and Eric Davis come out best from this whole documentary. Quantum physicist, ATIP chief scientist. He's part of the UAP task force and he's a scientific advisor. Okay. Eric Davis, PhD, astrophysicist, ATIP scientific advisor. So, and he's a UAP task force scientific advisor. Okay. Down here we have Travis Taylor, PhD, and he is a quantum physicist. And he's part of the UAP task force, and he is a chief scientist there. So he's not a scientific advisor. He's a chief scientist for UAP task force. And Hal Puthoff is the chief scientist for ATIP. Okay. Then we have Jay Stratton, Navy intelligence officer, Defense Intelligence Agency, senior executive, retired. Of course, we do know that Hal Puthoff, according to Russell Targ in 2023, in a podcast, said, of course, that Hal Puthoff is also a naval intelligence officer. And so there we go. That's what we have there. And as I said in my Intuited back in 2017, when I was looking into the camera, I was looking at the US Navy and I was looking at Hal Puthoff in particular. So I'm very happy to see that he's moving in a direction that is attempting to encourage people to let him off the hook and talk about things that he knows. Okay. So the next thing that they talked about was so-called warp bubbles, and they had images very similar to this. They said that within these warp bubbles, they create a different property of space-time inside the bubble than on the outside of the bubble. Now, I think it's very important when you look at this that there is more in the imagery than they are actually specifically saying in the words. That is to say, you could have just put a bubble-like thing around here. You didn't have to do a torsion this way and a torsion that way. Okay, you didn't have to do that. You could just put something that looked like a bubble here. Secondly, you wouldn't have to have done a deliberate chromatic aberration down here. Okay, so you've got a chromatic aberration down here. And when this is what is effectively called riding a surf wave here, so you've distorted space-time here and basically you've depressurized it here, so you're falling forward, basically surfing like a surfer in this point. Again, you have a vortex here, and you also have chromatic aberration over here and chromatic aberration over here. So this is telling you a lot more in my view. I don't think this is accidental. Okay, all right, and two very particular shapes here. You have the triangle craft with the 90-degree sides on it, as was given in one of the testimonies, then we have a Langley Air Force Base, I think it was, in NASA's hangar, coming out of the NASA's hangar, and I did the script on that recently. Whilst the conference, whilst the the hearing was going on, I actually produced the script and published it. And this is your classic sort of two dinner plates or pan lids, and these would have a field effect formation around them for the vectoring, and I've discussed that in detail in the past. So I'm going to actually read through what they're saying and do some commentary here as I go. So Eric Davis starts off by saying, with enough energy, you could create a bubble, a warp bubble around the spacecraft that would have a different property of space-time inside the bubble than outside the bubble. So inside the bubble, different space-time than outside the bubble. Hal Puthoff then tag teams him and says this energy field would completely isolate the craft from the environment. So the environment that we have on Earth includes gravity. So if you're completely isolating it from the environment, you're not only isolating it from electromagnetic waves, from wind, that is to say, weather events, you're also isolating it from gravity. Okay? But you might ask then, how does the craft actually move forward within its bubble? Yeah, how does it move forward? Thank you very much, Skog. It's very, very kind of you for that £20. Really appreciate it. Okay, so yeah, so how does it move forward? Well, he says, then he tag teams back to Eric Davis, and he says, the craft inside the bubble has a way of altering the bubble's properties in order to change its direction of motion. So yeah, it's altering its properties. And then Hal Puthoff cuts in, and he says, literally finishes the sentence of Eric Davis, such that you have a downward press in front and an upward press behind. So it'd be like riding a space-time in the same way that a surfer would ride a wave in the ocean. And we believe hypersonic velocity and instantaneous acceleration. And the reason is that time is moving differently for people inside the bubble versus people outside the bubble. Whoever's inside the craft would feel like they're just cruising along. They wouldn't be feeling the effects of what looks like speeds and accelerations. That would turn a human being into pudding. So you would not, he calls it, I call it turning people into mush. But anyway, basically it turns, if you were to expose yourself to the inertia in here, either starting or stopping, it's like running into a brick wall at 70 miles an hour. Your skull stops, but your brain keeps going forward inside your cranial cavity, and it literally turns to mush. Well, this would do that in extremis. Okay, so it's essentially what he's saying without saying it is there's no inertia. Okay, so he's removed even the concept of inertia from this. Now, he then clarifies what the implications of this are. He says this one breakthrough can be the key to interstellar travel, where you want to travel long distances without taking enormous amounts of subjective time. Now, remember what I said. The paper that was released in the middle of 1979, in the summer of 1979, before my father showed me these 4 structures in the sky, was done called Field Propulsion Concept. It's published on the NASA website. And the guy that did that, Alan C. Holt, went to lead the propulsion technologies for NASA that had a triangular craft at Langley Air Force Base of the NASA hangar coming out to lead that propulsion. And in 1999, as I showed you last week, and I've shown before in other presentations in years gone by, that he co-wrote a paper with none other than Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis on a range of things that are possible, like propulsion. Okay, so it could not be clearer, the characters involved. Okay, then they claim this subject of low observability. That is to say, in this particular forward-looking infrared camera, you can only see this kind of weird kind of glow around it, and this lack of observing. It's like a black thing in the middle, and with this kind of like tongue coming out. I'm using the phrase tongue because that is what was used by David Adair. And so Hal Puthoff says, we'd also have low observability because the bubble acts as a barrier between 2 space-time environments. This would eliminate or conceal most of the known signatures of conventional technologies. This is why radar would have difficulty tracking a craft, because the signal from the radar would be distorted by the energy field around the craft. Eric Davis then tag teams, the radar signatures literally just moved around the bubble and does not reflect back to the radar emitter. I have said that fractal toroidal electrodynamic structures and their non-radiating boundaries have this property. I will show you that this is known in mainstream physical press, be it on a small scale, but this is scale invariant. And I can tell you that this will be the case, that it is this that is doing these effects. Hal P then says, so it's not surprising when someone takes a photo of a UAP, they find they get a fuzzy and distorted picture because they're actually taking a photo through a space-time barrier. You're actually looking into a different type of space here, where this little object is here, if we are to believe that this is one of these objects. Again, this is fuzzy because of that. Now, we absolutely know these things are fuzzy. We've literally got them on video being fuzzy, and when they interact with the material, whilst it does look like a very tight boundary, it does have a fuzzy area around it. Okay. Now, the thing that really I liked about this particular video was here. He talks about the energy field structure. The energy field structure. Hal says, what's been happening recently is that we have upgraded our sensor systems on our fighter aircraft. And these images that are now picked up with our advanced sensor systems, we can begin to see the actual structure of the energy field around the craft, which is in the past they would not have been able to do. So he's saying that these images that we have here, these images, and I've taken just 3 partial screen grabs. This is exactly as it's exposed in the film. Taken these 3 partial screen grabs. And if they are serious about disclosure, they will not have an issue with me doing that. Either you're disclosing or either you're keeping things to money, money, money. Disclosing or money, money, money. What is it? What is it? So, 3 partial screen grabs. And you can see sort of a larger circle here with what looks like 3 small circles in here with what would appear to be possibly 2 half moons each. This kind of looks like 4, this more looks like 4, and it's moving around during this process. Okay. He then goes on. We also observed trans-medium travel, because the craft is moving within its own space-time and the outside environment through which it's moving is inconsequential. Well, you know what also does trans-medium travel? Ball lightning. It can go from outside a building through the glass, which is a dielectric, inside a building. It can go from inside a Matsumoto reactor, through the water, through the glass, through the air, and into the nuclear emulsions in their casing. Ball lightning can come through or at least send part of itself through a thunderstorm generator, which is steel. We can see in the Bogdanovich work, it can penetrate also dielectrics. We can see in very many experiments that these things can go trans-medium, okay? This would allow a craft to go seamlessly from space through the atmosphere and into the water. From space through the atmosphere into the water. And as I told you, in somewhere around early 2010s, I was told by someone that's staying with us that I'm repeating this story, these 2 stories are in my Nan Madol presentation, so you can go and see them way back when. The first is that this person said their girlfriend on Hawaii was a person that took the elites out for diving on some of the northwestern islands, kind of like off limits normally. And she witnessed these craft flying around under the water and coming out of the water and going back into the water. And she started to talk about it and they offed her. That was the story he told me. And then secondly, there was another people staying with me. Again, the woman was from Hawaii and he was not. And I was saying that I don't know much about Hawaii, but I recounted this story and she said, see, I told you, I saw them when I was a kid and I saw them recently coming in and out of the water. So I haven't had firsthand, but I have had 2 anecdotes from people in Hawaii that have observed these things. And I have shown in my Nan Madol presentation, there seems to be a channel from Nan Madol all the way to those northwestern Hawaiian islands. So I think there's definitely something going on there. If anyone's in Hawaii, let me know. Okay, all right. So Eric Davis then comes in, and they could do so because the warp bubble that surrounds them shunts air molecules or ocean water molecules around the craft so it could effortlessly move through any medium. This is exactly what an exotic vacuum object does. It moves the stuff around. You can see it almost in a normal soliton, a normal water ring in water, or in a gas soliton, a smoke ring. Kind of pulls the stuff around and then to the side. You've got to imagine something that's a lot better at doing that. And of course, Ken Shoulders and the Russians and many other people, they have been able to get these things through to go and burrow through directly refractory ceramics without causing them to heat. Let me say that again. Refractory ceramics like alumina, which melts at something like 2070 plus degrees, and fused quartz, which melts over 1,700 degrees centigrade in both cases, to go through and burrow a hole through these refractory ceramics. Okay, so it just distorts their ability to hold together. Okay, so I'll take your atmosphere, I'll take your space, and I'll take your water, and I'll raise you 2 refractory ceramics. Of course, silicon dioxide and aluminium oxide are basically most of the rock in the Earth. Okay? Hal Puthoff then goes on to say, we also observe anti-gravity. So we've not just got this trans-medium travel, we've got anti-gravity being claimed. Okay? Because the Earth's gravitational field is no longer having any effect on the craft inside the space-time bubble. Well, that is what a ball lightning does. It floats there. And as George Eagley, who was brought over by a colleague of Hal Puthoff's called Bernard Heish, who also worked with John Hutchison, who's currently in the chat, Bernard Heish brought him over because George Eagley was an expert in ball lightning. And I've worked with George Eagley. I've travelled and slept in the same room as George Eagley. George Eagley told me 2 anecdotes in India on our second time there when we were visiting Suhas Ralkar, who showed me some of these effects within 24 hours of me saying that they could be possible. Thank you very much, Skoggy. So basically, he talked about 2 bits of ball lightning anecdotes that he had collected in his research over 20 years into ball lightning, which is why he was so interesting to the US nuclear authorities and Navy, was 2. One, this ball floated into the presence of this person and it failed and outpoured a load of sand, which means it can carry quite a lot of weight. And the sand was not melted, which means probably it was below 300-400 degrees centigrade. It wasn't sintered together. And then internally, at least. And then another one was where this ball lightning came into the presence of this person. It broke, and out of it came a couple of gallons of water, which means it wasn't even over 100 degrees inside the ball lightning. And so that is quite amazing. He also talked about this one where the ball lightning came along the side of a train and it touched the aluminium window frame, and for about 20 minutes the passenger in the train was able to manipulate with his fingers the aluminium of the aluminium window frame and mold it. And this is the same thing as Tom Bearden was talking about here, that the Russians were able to do with electromagnetic waves to make aluminium castable. And of course, Alec Pizarro was able to do the same kind of thing by putting his hand into a recently glowing Hutchison metal billet and leave his fingerprint in there. Okay. So, he goes on, because the Earth's gravitational field is no longer having any effect on the craft inside the space-time bubble. This is why a craft does not need engines or wings or other aspects that one would associate with the craft that needs to fly in the atmosphere. I rest my case. That is basically what Tesla claimed he would be able to do with the application of this principle in Sun, New York, 1911. 1911. No normal thing that would cause propulsion, no wings, screw propellers, as fast as you like in any atmospheric condition. Everything that's being talked about here, claimed by Tesla, Sun, New York, 1911. It's really disconnected from the atmosphere, he's saying. And the energy field associated with these craft causes highly energetic wave of radiation, which is why people getting too close to UAP can experience biological effects that are harmful to humans. What are those biological effects? They're typically burns, they're problems in the brain or whatever. You might feel a sense of love and connection to the oneness of everything, and also skin falling off and issues like that. Principally, there is blue shift going on in certain versions of certain modes of operation. That is, normal photons and even IR can be blue shifted up to UV and off to soft X-ray. The UV is penetrating and causes burns, but it is the torsion fields, in my view, and the chi flux that causes more difficult problems. And what do I mean by that? One, it should cause the water in your molecules and parts of your body to disassociate from each other and effectively boiling without turning high temperature. That's going to cause a lot of delamination in the body. Of course, there's the pressure of the actual physical structure of the body holding things together, but in terms of the skin. And then the torsion field does, it should cause the beta isotopes in the body, principally carbon-14. Every trillionth carbon atom in your DNA will be carbon-14, as in the rest of the body. But the one that's worse than that is potassium-40, because that produces high energy beta and a little bit of gamma, but mostly very high energy beta. And that will cause, pinprick type feelings in the body, which you actually get in anecdotes in Dr. George Eagley's studies of ball lightning. You get these pinpricks. And it was also observed and recounted in this book by Jerry Vassilatos, Secrets of Cold War Technology, as being something that Nikola Tesla observed when he was doing his dark rays, his electrical particles and matter type thing. And he was observing those things even when he was behind a conductor like copper or a dielectric like glass. So basically these things are highly penetrating. And so you would want to be in the craft before it gets spun up, and you would want to be away from the craft when it is being spun up. You definitely wouldn't want to be under it within its non-radiating boundary as it's taking off. You're going to get covered in static, as was observed by the guy in Congress who talked about the triangular craft. And you're going to get a chi flux, as I think Jake Barber observed. Okay, so these are the kind of things that you should expect to get those kind of things. You want to keep your distance, basically. Now, he says, now, we understand that these craft exist in a space-time environment that's different from the exterior space-time environment. This can begin to explain claimed observations by the same military people who have approached and gotten into a craft and find that time is running at a different rate inside the craft, then claim learning. I wrote that wrong. Then basically outside the craft. They think that they're only a few minutes when they come out outside the craft. But some hours have gone by, so they feel like they've got missing time, or suddenly, with respect to the size of the craft, if someone is outside the craft and it looks like a small craft, they go inside and it's the size of a football stadium. Once you've realized that space and time are being engineered to be different inside the craft, then they are outside the craft. Thank you very, very much, Ranch Recon. That's really appreciated. So yeah, as I've argued, the phase singularity, the topological monopole, that will effectively get a gravitational aspect to it, but also it changes epsilon zero within the spherical region of the fractal magnetohydrodynamic structure and fractal toroidal moment structure. And I believe it is these things that account for the observed phenomena. You get effectively different space-time metrics inside the craft, and it's that, even that alone is what's causing the blue shift to a degree. Yeah, so there we go. These things are all when you get to a point, it's just, oh God, it's just tedious. But anyway, they still think they can string us out for a little bit longer, I guess. Okay, and then he goes on, then these anomalies that people report that sound completely absurd can actually make sense. Can actually make sense. Well, they make sense to me, right? Hopefully they do to many of you. Okay, so then we get on to the next part of this, which is clean energy. Clean energy. And you can see here on my bubble, I've got a little eye here with a ring in it. I have question marks. I have little toroidal structures, little vortice structures, more question marks, more double tori, more little distorted eyes. Yeah. There we go. Clean energy. What are they talking about when it comes to clean energy? Well, Hal Puthoff then makes the comment that the top issue is what is their energy supply? Well, remember how I got to this understanding in March 2017. I realized that Hal Puthoff was connected to Ken Shoulders. So Hal Puthoff was connected to the guy that wrote this, Charge Clusters in Infinite Energy. And this is in this is issue 61, 2005, but it's a reprint from an earlier thing. Okay, and the reason that Hal Puthoff was working with Ken Shoulders, I realized charge clusters were what was doing the process, but Ken Shoulders worked out about exotic vacuum objects and charge clusters because he was working with one John Hutchison. And for those that don't know John Hutchison, shame on you. He's in the chat, so say hello. But John Hutchison is here in this book. And there are some of the Hutchison effect samples. I've got some in the drawer over there. Okay. He was formerly working, or with him from 1981 to 1995, with one Dr. George D. Hathaway. And this is George Hathaway's book, Mind Bending. Okay? And whilst we're here, when we do John Hutchison's book, which will be Mr. Possible, we have signed copies here of George Hathaway's book to be giving away as part of the Kickstarter. Okay? Right. So, yes, he goes on to say, the top issue is what their energy supply is. So, yeah, I got to this point of realizing that these things are what does UFOs and LENA and all this kind of thing from the energy side. So this is getting into my territory. This is getting into my territory where I began on this particular journey. Because the evidence for how much energy they're using per unit time so exceeds any kind of power levels that we can generate. Eric Davis says, UAPs have exhibited propulsive performance characteristics that imply the generation of 1,100 billion watts of power. 1,100 billion watts of power. This is more than 100 times the daily electrical utility power generation in the US. Of course, that is what they would be requiring if they were trying to keep up their using and accelerating and decelerating using conventional technology. Might not be true if they're using non-conventional technology. Okay? Because if you decoupled yourself from space-time outside and it can flow through instantaneously, there's no inertia, there's no gravity to overcome, you don't have to go deal with inertia, then do you really need all of that? Do you really need all of that? Yes, 1.1 gigawatts. 1.1 gigawatts is probably what you need. Yes. Yes. There are two prevailing hypotheses, says Eric Davis, for how UAPs create the energy that warps space-time around them. And one is that the spacecraft can produce its own bubble of vacuum energy around the craft. Okay, here's the thing. All energy, whether it's chemical, nuclear, superchemical, whatever, molecular, anything, whatever it is, subnuclear, comes from reducing the distortion in the physical vacuum. That is a phrase that is in Stoyan-Sargachev's Basic Structures of Matter Supergravitational Theory. Okay, and he stayed with me in 2014 and we discussed it. Okay, so essentially all energy is released when you reduce the distortion in the physical vacuum. An actual atom that occupies less space-time gives you energy in the form of condensation to a higher binding energy in a more dense nuclei. Okay, so it's overall distorting. So when you get 2 deuterons and you fuse them to 4 helium, then the 4 helium occupies less space-time. It distorts less space-time than does a ordinary the 2 individual deuterons. Now, I guess what they're saying is that to create this bubble, where there's a different space-time metric inside, you need to push that vacuum energy out to a new radius. Okay? And I guess this is where you need to have a lot of power in their estimation in order to do that, to create that space-time bubble. There are 2 prevailing hypotheses for how the UAP create the energy that warps space-time around them. And one is that the spacecraft can produce its own bubble of vacuum energy around the craft, which is also known as zero-point energy. So it's having to push that zero-point energy out of the way. How is it doing that? Well, maybe it's a fractal electrodynamic structure that has a non-radiating boundary, and in the process of doing that, it has to pull in a lot of vacuum energy and assemble a structure around itself of self-similar structures that are bound to the overall electrodynamics. And the other is that the craft could be using quantum entanglement to draw on remote, distant source of energy. Yeah, I'm not so buying that one. He said it, but I'm not so buying that one. I mean, it's pulling it maybe from the ether to make the bubble. I need to have a discussion with him to find out what he actually means by that phrase. Okay. And then Christopher Mellon chimes in at this point, and this guy here is former Deputy Assistant of the Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, Department of the DoD, right? Why is that important? Because in 1995, the DoD and the Department of Energy, we're talking about energy here, he's from the Department of Defense, in 1995, classified the Warren and Cooley patent, which was an energy patent that used a magnetohydrodynamic structure that caused fusion in the core, and it was a ball lightning analog. If you don't know what I'm talking about because your first time here, then go and have a look at some things that I've shared in the past, specifically earlier this year from that patent documents that I found before that were given to Dr. Takaaki Matsumoto before they were classified in late 1995. So this Christopher Mellon might be aware that there is energy technology that uses precisely the technology that does this, or maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's ignorant of what the DoD has already classified. Maybe he's ignorant of what the DoD has already classified in this exact arena. He says, if we can understand the technology, we'll go and read Warren and Cooley's patent, it's a good start, that we're observing, it has so many potential beneficial impacts, including clean energy. Well, what about that? We're seeing these craft doing unbelievable things. Now, they're not unbelievable when you've looked at some of the experiments in the Vega experiments, which I've been sharing for years and years now. And it's not combustion engineering. Well done. Yeah, it's not combustion engineering. No combustion going on. That is to say, oxidation of a material that can be oxidized, whether that's coal or aluminium or oil, gas. Okay. Then Andre Carson steps in here, and he's, I think, a senator on the Intelligence Committee or something. I might have got that wrong. He says, this is technology that could replace oil, gas, and coal and protect our planet for future generations. Well, why aren't we doing something about it then? Why are we just talking about it? Why are we just trying to disclose if it has the benefit of removing all of these sky falling in things that we're apparently not going to, be able to live with, because by now we're all swimming. Everyone's swimming right now. They're all swimming because Inconvenient Truth told you. Even when I was watching Inconvenient Truth for the first time, which was shortly after its release, I found 7 facts in there that were not facts, right? That was right from the get-go, like even before the time that we are now, where we're all underwater. I can barely breathe. There's so much water here. What a load of nonsense. Okay. Jay Stratton steps in. Naval intelligence here steps in, and he says, how can we use these technologies and all of the capabilities that might come from it not to fight a war, but to increase our standard of living? To increase our ability to get from place to place. That would be nice, Jay. That would be nice. To increase our standard of living. Yep. To get from place to place easier. That would be nice, Jay. Yeah. Do you actually know anything? Do you actually know anything, Jay? Do you? Go and have a look into the CIA archives or the US Naval Labs archives or the classified patents, and maybe you'll get a clue. Or maybe you already know. Maybe you already know. But how can we use these technologies and all the capabilities that might come from it not to fight a war? How can we use them to not fight a war? How? Don't start wars! That's how! Don't start wars! I mean, one of the reasons I got into this entire space is because a lot of the wars come from the fact that people can't grow stuff, they can't drink stuff, because there's no potable water for both. And they don't have any energy. That's why the wars are there. It's kind of like the wars don't really need a reason. People like to live where they were born. They like the smells. They like the environment. They like the type of trees. They like the type of desert. They like the type of green. They like the type of snow, right? If they could just live there and get on with their own lives and not have to pay a tithe for everything that they do to someone that then tells them how much tithe they need to give, right? Then they don't get upset. People just want to live their lives. Generally, most people just want to get on and have a good time, not really annoy everyone. They just want to enjoy life, right? How can we do it? How can we not have a war with these technologies? Why would we not have a war? Why? Why would we not have a war if everyone had all the energy they needed, they had all the food they needed, and they could get around? How would we not have a war? I don't know. There's so many opportunities for war with this technology. How would we not have a war? But use it to increase our standard of living, increase our ability to get from place to place. Andre Carson steps in. We can talk more about teleportation. When a senior government official is saying, we can talk more about teleportation. What, you mean we were only talking a little about it? Because I've been talking about it since 2017. I've been talking about it since March the 1st, 2017, publicly, right? But now we can talk about it more. Listen, you can either teleport or you can't. Either teleport or you can't. When you know you can teleport, everyone's going to be talking about it. When you know you can teleport, everyone's going to be talking about it. Okay? Some of these structures, they seem to teleport from point A to point B. They just do. We could talk more about hypersonic travel, not hypersonic missiles, not hypersonic projectiles, not hypersonic bombs, not hypersonic submarines that blow up and produce a tsunami to cover cities. No, we can talk about hypersonic travel. Wouldn't that be nice? Keep your hypersonic travel. Give me teleportation. That's what I'd like. I hate flying. I actually hate driving as well. Then Lou Elizondo steps in. Being able to take human beings to the next evolutionary step, which is the stars. Being able to explore new star systems and planets. Yeah. That would be nice. Have you been doing it already? Have some little people been doing it already? Or with all of that money being appropriated, is it just being misspent and no one was able to work it out? Was no one able to work it out? Was no one able to work it out? Either you have it and you got something to deliver, or you don't. How about disclosure? How about real disclosure? Okay. Then Hal Puthoff steps in and he says this. On the other hand, you would have to weigh the consequences of sharing with the world, knowing that there are bad actors out there. Thanks, Hal. For a second there, I didn't think there was any bad person on planet Earth. Well, as I've said, a lot of people become bad because they don't have their needs met. Now, you could argue that some humans think they've got infinite needs and they desire to control. But you know what? If everyone can go everywhere immediately, how do you control anything? And that is the point. It's losing control that they're worried about. If you don't have to suck the teat to be able to keep yourself cool in the summer and warm in the winter, if you don't have to suck the teat to get a little drop to drink, if you don't have to suck the teat and beg for scraps, please, sir, can I have some more? Can I have some more? From the fake money that's created. Because only real money comes from people actually processing things in the ground and making them into things that people want. Everything else is just usury and rent seeking. How do you rent seek? How do you rent seek when people have their needs met? How are you the sort of person that does actually nothing of any use to society if you can't rent seek? Difficult. Jay Stratton says, if I were adversaries, if I were adversaries, they would have access to the same technologies. They could flip that into some very, very powerful weapons of mass destruction. Yeah, they could do things like, I don't know, take big buildings down. Travis Taylor steps in. You could put a nuclear bomb inside one of these things and let it fly, ride it through a building, through concrete, Jay Stratton says, through steel, wherever you want it, anywhere in the world. Jay Stratton says that some bad actors that have access to this technology, they could let a structure that could do damage go, fly right through a building, through the concrete, through steel, wherever you want it, anywhere in the world. That's the sort of thing that can happen. Wouldn't that be bad? Wouldn't it be bad? Thousands of people could die. It could upset people so that then they spend trillions of dollars killing more people. That would be terrible, wouldn't it? Let's make sure that doesn't happen. Let's make sure that does not happen. Thank you, Travis, for that warning. Andre Carson says, we want to talk about it publicly. Hold on. Do you know something or do you not know something? Do you know something or do you not something? Not know something. We want to talk about it publicly. And we want to encourage folks to talk about it. It says, we want to talk about it publicly and encourage folks to talk about it. But while we're talking about it publicly, Our adversaries are paying attention to context clues, to piece things together, and about possible technologies that we may have that they don't have access to. So it's a fine line. You see? They got to say, oh, it would be amazing if we could do these things. If only we could do these things. Right. So if you can't do them, what are you disclosing? And then you're saying, we want to talk about this publicly. We want to encourage folks to talk about this publicly. But while we're talking about it publicly, are bad people. Bad people who haven't got enough to drink or eat or can't get around or have a low standard of sanitation. Those people, in that spread spectrum, there's going to be some bad people in there, you know, and they, you know, they might have do something with those technologies. They're going to try and think about what technologies we're suggesting we might have. It's a fine line. Do we, don't we? Do we, don't we? Don't. It's been going on long enough. It's been going long enough. Perhaps if you didn't spend 10, 15, 20 trillion bombing the hell out of people, instead using this technology to say, you poor people, how about having nice fresh water to irrigate your crops? How about having energy so you're not cold? How about having energy so you're not warm, right? You need to travel about? Well, yeah, probably we shouldn't be filling the atmosphere with really nasty part combustive products, right? How about having a technology that allows you to get around? If that had been going on for the last 50 years, we would have everyone very friendly. They would be friendly. Now, you could argue that they didn't work it out 50 years ago, or they only worked out how to use this stuff to blow beep up, All they know how to do is to turn metal and concrete and glass to dust, to turn tanks to jelly, to electrify people. They only really know how to use this technology to damage. Really? Or is that the only technology you've deployed? They're worried about the weaponization. That kind of feels a bit like a guilty complex. Feels a little bit like a guilty complex. Of course, you can't release the energy and suddenly not use any oil and not buy any nuclear material, because someone will notice that. You could possibly still keep buying the nuclear bomb material, the uranium. You could keep buying that because, you know, you could store it in a small space. But it gets difficult after a while to store a hell of a lot of oil and coal. People start to notice, you know, what are the 10,000 oil drums over there? You know, what's that big mountain of coal? Why aren't you using it? I thought you were generating power. It becomes a bit difficult to reveal these technologies without actually giving the game away. Hal Puthoff steps in, and this comment from Hal Puthoff is where I'm a little bit disappointed in you, Hal. I'm a bit disappointed in you, Hal. Because it does sound a bit like what you said in the 1990s, around the time that the Warren and Cooley patent was being classified. Early 1990s to mid-1990s. Because Hal says, very commendable phrase, Hal, thank you. Hal Puthoff, says he would opt for making any new energy source a humanitarian issue. Because there are people dying, Hal. Yes. There are people starving. There are people, bad sanitation. Much worse than the sky falling in and the oceans rising. Much worse. Much worse. A lot of health is down to good food, good water, good sanitation. Most of the health, actually. Decent, you know, exercise as well. Not health advice, by the way. So he says, I would opt for making any new energy source a humanitarian issue. That it should be open. Yes, it should be open. It should be open. It should be open. Yes, Hal. Yes, I like it. Oh, then he says this. And we know how to do that. We've done it with nuclear power. Okay, what are we actually talking about in this open? Are we talking about backroom deals with governments? so that the government has control of the teat, so they can squeeze it a little when you need to drink and squeeze it a little more when you need to drive and squeeze it a little more when you need to travel. Is that what we're talking about, Hal? Because back in the 1990s, you were saying, let's replace the coal and the oil and the nuclear with zero-point energy technology. No one need to know. No one need to know. No one need to know. So we can keep this to ourselves. Money, money, money. Yes. Because that's what happened with nuclear. You see if you can go into a nuclear reactor and have a good luck and see how it works. See how easy it is for you to use open nuclear technology and build yourself a nuclear reactor. Let's see how that goes. Yeah, let's see how that goes. Is that what you're talking about, Hal? I'd like you to clarify. Are you talking about opening it up to friendlies so that they can have the little precious? Or are you genuinely saying open this technology up to humanity? Because it doesn't sound like it. I'll read the phrase again. I would opt for making any new energy source a humanitarian issue. Yes. That it should be open. Yes, double yes. And we know how to do that. What? Making a humanitarian issue and open? What are you saying here? We've done that with nuclear power. Oh, you're doing so well, Hal. You were doing so well, and then you crashed and burned. Mike Round steps in. US Senator, South Dakota, Committee on Armed Services. Yep, another military person in this documentary. He says, if the capabilities that exist come to the forefront and they become known to the world, it might very well be to the benefit of mankind. Yes! Well done! Well done, Mike Rounds, US Senator, South Dakota, Committee on Armed Services. Yeah. It might be useful to have an energy technology that is clean, allows for teleportation, allows for hypersonic travel, explore new star systems. But we have consequences for disclosure. Oh, yes. And with that, I'm going to visit the little boy's room, and we're going to go into part 2 of tonight's presentation imminently. Thanks, guys, for your generosity tonight to Black Tie for his £10, for Scoggy Hoggins. Yes, believe in the positive. It will outshine eventually. I believe so. We can be very positive about this. Scoggy Hoggins says he is beautiful. I agree with that. The world is beautiful. Definitely agree with that. And the future is incredibly beautiful. Yes, yes, definitely. Scoggy back again says Hawaii supposedly one island is the Earth's heart chakra. Okay. Very interesting. Did not know that. Thank you for that €5. And thanks to Ranch Recon for that $4.99. Very kind words too. Okay, so back in 2017, 2018, I shared a blog on Steemit. Steemit goes into the blockchain. I could not change it. And so that's why I chose that platform. It had no adverts on it when I started on Steemit. And because they got adverts on it, I moved to Substack in 2019. And I was talking about how the water spark plug could be a good way to study strange radiation and charge metals for LENR. Journey Tumler actually in one of the videos found this glowing plasmoid structure in one of the frames away from the spark plug. So this is Aaron Murakami's plasma spark plug type devices. See a capacitor here and blah, blah, blah. And you see this kind of like purple, and it's kind of like a ionization of nitrogen, which is 78% of the air. And these substructures in here with these conical things coming out. Okay, that's what we can see. Okay, and it was in the following year that the Moscow Nuclear Physics Institute published video recordings of long-lived plasmoids near objects exposed to remote and direct effects of high current pinch discharges. So this was 2019 it was published. So you can see our water here, and we can see a fuzzy plasma ball here. And you can go and have a look at the paper here. Not only did they see solitons moving around on the metal up to 2 days afterwards, they also found these crystal-like structures of 5, 6 or something solitons that were moving around their own axis and around their common axis, and ultimately they converted themselves into a vortex tori sort of tornado current pinch. Okay, and you can see these tongues coming out here. There's a tongue coming out here. This individually here looks to me very similar to one of the so-called UAP videos. Now, what is true about this and this experiment is there is a high DI/dt discharge in a water environment. In this case, it was water mist. In this case, it was the mist boundary around a shearing water column onto a surface. The water shot down here and shot out here, and it was in this water mist area with the shear around it that it created these plasmoids type structures. Okay, and they talk in this paper very significantly about monopoles, but I don't want to go into that too much today. Okay, I think these two pieces of data, high DI/dt discharge in a water mist rich environment, and this high DI/dt discharge in a water rich environment, plays very well with Melinda Pardee and Ed Pardee's video that was published here on youtube.com. Watch V = little m capital O F W capital F capital H capital B U_O. They come across as completely genuine in the moment, talking about their experience. This looks like it's on Zoom. They're just commenting on what they sent. This is Edward, so his full name is Edward Pardee, and it's Melinda Pardee. This is published on Global News, so go and have a look at it. Their first kind of view is from their house and looking across outside into a field, and then into the far distance they see this thing. Fortunately, they zoom into it. So the commentary that he is making here is Ed, after a rather vicious lightning strike, we saw the ball of fire kind of retain, I don't know, 20 foot above the ground. So he's saying here it's about 20 foot above the ground based on his estimation. I guess we know that the wheat is a certain, if that's wheat, it has a certain height. If it's maize or corn, it will be higher. depending on whether it's a genetically modified corn, which has a short stubby. Same for wheat. And then we've got these tree line here. So maybe he's estimating it from the crop and the tree, how high it was. He says, yeah, it was moving horizontally above the ground. Yep, so it's not touching the ground, it's floating above the ground. Incredibly bright too. Incredibly bright too. Melinda wants to say, and this is Melinda's only real comment in this clip. She says, it was very bright. So that is the thing that really stuck with both of them. It's very bright. Ed says it was really bright. He's reinforcing it. Incredibly bright. It was very bright. It was really bright. I was glad it was far away from our house, though, because I don't think I'd want to get near that, because that's a lot of power in there. Okay. So what I've done for your viewing pleasure is I've leveraged a few of my skills, and I have done a shake removal, a motion tracking, and stabilization and location around the center point of the structure, and produced a video for you. And we're going to have a look at that now. Okay, so there's something to note in here, and it'll become very clear when I switch out and I go to the video and we move forward and backwards through it. That is to say, I think the original video was filmed, I think, on an iPhone at 60 frames per second. And it was published at 29.97 frames per second. That is to say, the video on YouTube was at 29.97 frames per second. And there was frame blending artifacts. And this is proven, in my view, by a bird that flies across. And you'll see that. So I'm just going to play it through first. But you'll see that this bird often appears twice in the same frame. And this occurs when someone takes a 60 frames per second that they've been supplied, and they just think, well, my broadcast studio sends out 29.97, the never twice the same color standard for video frames, and it blends 2 frames together in the CAT software. Okay? All right. So here we go.
Shows the ball of light for about 20 seconds before it disintegrates.
Okay, did you see what happened there? Did you see what happened there? So if I go back, we'll play it again. You can hear the commentary by the news reporter.
By Ed and Melinda Party. It shows the ball of light for about 20 seconds before it disintegrates.
20 seconds. So that is longer than you typically have in the plasma confinement of a 1 mile wide nuclear bomb. Okay? Now, some people are already noticing that it broke up at the end. Now, there's several things going on here. One is that it's pulsating and it's changing between yellow and red and blue. Okay? These are all common observations in the historical records of ball lightning. Secondly, there is this bird that flies across here and here, okay? You can see here and here, right? There's 2 frames there. The reason there's 2 frames is because it's blending them, okay? Blending 2 frames together as one. Okay, so it goes down, flat, up, flat, and then down. And there's a bit of flapping going on. But what it is, it's somewhere between the camera and the zoom and the far field and my zooming in. Okay. So, but the really interesting thing is, just to confirm, I'll go back. Right.
By Ed and Melinda Party. It shows the ball of light for about 20 seconds before it disintegrates.
Okay. So just to confirm, at this point where I'm tracking it, and as they say, it's moving sideways, you see 2 bird images on the same frame here, and you see a circle here and a circle here. And what it is I'm keeping the center of the ball lightning in frame, and what's happening is it is moving to the right, and it's blending 2 frames together. So this is not elongated. This is not a oblique spheroid in this case. This is just 2 frames blended together with me keeping the center on the center. Okay? But as people have noticed, and when you get to the end, it's not just about the pulsating, the changing from blue and to red and orange. These kind of things occur. There's even kind of a flux coming in here at this point. It's when it gets to the end here. Okay, so again, it's just dying at this point, and it's dying over here. Now it's moving in this direction. So this is categorically proving it's moving in this direction. Okay, because this is a previous frame, and this is 2 frames, the previous frame and the current frame blended together. Okay, right, and you can see a kind of that before it starts to break up, it tears something in from the side. So from here, it's kind of tearing in, and then it stabilizes a little bit lower, and then it kind of breaks up to here, and you get this kind of field structure here. All right. And then it collapses down, and it collapses down into 3 linked substructures. 3 linked substructures. In the next frame, those linkages start to break apart. And in the next frame, they are completely broken apart, the 3 substructures. This one's further away. This is the closest one. This is slightly further around. This is the furthest away. There's another kind of curved structure that appears here, and it's offset. And there's still a bit of curved structure here. This one's still there. This one's nearly gone. That one's pretty much gone. And then it fades out. There's still a bit of curve going on there. Still a bit with the one that's closest to us. Still a bit here. You might not see it on YouTube encoding, sorry. There's still a little bit down the bottom here. And then it's still there. Right at the end, it's still there, that little bit down the bottom. And then it kind of dies away. Okay. Now, what is going on in this video? What is going on? Well, they say what is going on. They have a rather vicious lightning strike. Okay, clearly this is a wet, extremely humid day with rain and a rather vicious lightning strike. So this is essentially the same as this, where you have an intense electromagnetic high DIDT pulse, and you have a structure formed at some distance. Okay, again, this is the same thing as is going on in here. So you have inadvertent experimental observation, and real nature showing and manifesting here. Now we're going to reverse this, because what I'm saying is that is what happens when it collapses, right? It almost instantaneously formed. Now what Ken Shoulder said, these are electronic structures that build at electronic speeds. Now, what I can say is in this structure here, there is no machine inside this, no physical machine that is producing this structure. In this structure and this structure, there is no physical machine that is in there, okay? In this ball lightning, this one here, there is no physical machine that is in there, okay? But whatever it is, the electrodynamics is able to build from something, but you don't see it because it happens so freaking quickly. But the decay is the kind of reverse of it spinning down. And that is why this video is probably one of the most important ball lightning videos, if not the most important ball lightning video that has ever been captured. So thanks to the parties. I'm going to run this in reverse. This is near the end with our bright, medium, and weakest spot and our curve. Then we have our next one with our linked ones, and then our next one with our ball with our blue region around it, and then our next one, it's growing, and then it's growing, and we see our blurred birdie in there. Now, what do you think I'm going to do next? What do you think I'm going to do next? I think it's a bit of time to have a look to see what our sacred geometry looks like on this. No, I already did that, Dak. Look, this is our brightest glowing sphere. I'm going to overlay my sacred geometry at the start of those sequence of images. So what sequence of images I'm talking about? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay?
By Ed and...
So that's near the end. 2 is when they're joining up. 3, 4, 5. Okay? Here we go. Bit of sacred geometry. Boom. That's right at the end of the collapse. So you have inside the Vesica Pisces, inside the golden ratio line, and then on this curve on one side, you have the curved bit. Now, of course, the third Tor substructure is off to one side, and that might account for why these effectively are offset. It could be that because this is not a two-Tor sub-Tor structure, that it's nothing to do with being inside the Vesica Pisces in this instance. I would imagine if this was a 2 structure, it would be fully filling here and here, as we see in other systems. Okay, so I think this is a 3-orb structure, and it perfectly fits within the geometry. So I'm going to go to the next frame. Now you can see it spinning up, very, very clearly fitting in within the structure. I spin up a little bit more, and we're going within this radiating boundary structure. And this is exactly the heart shape that we kind of see in nature, in temples, in bubble structures, all kinds of things. The next one is just outside. I could have chosen a different frame. It's just outside the apple with a slight skew to the ground. And the full bloom is within the non-radiating boundary. Within the non-radiating boundary. Okay? This is just the glow that you kind of get around these structures. The hard boundary is here. So boom, 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 boom. I'll go back to the beginning. This, I believe, is the torsion effect. This is the point of disruption, which we see on cavitation structures. And it appears as a white bubble going on. On the cardioid infarction, it's this little triangular shape, but we're actually seeing it in 3D here, but very low resolution. It's this little triangular shape where the next fractal Tor in the ether intersects with the torsion beam that comes down from here. This is essentially what is in the Mikhail Solin 1992 patents, this little triangular structure down here. It's one of the last things to die, but it shows that it's very intense when it's operating. You do not want to be under here. You do not want to be under here, okay? So when it's all spun up, it starts to cohere and it's joining up. It's joining up, I would argue, extremely similarly to the way these are joining up. These structures here are joining up. And if we could get in closer here, the way these ones are joining up, okay? Very similarly, okay? And of course, I would argue that this shape here, an individual one with the lick coming down here, the tongue, is effectively the same as what you're seeing here. It's the same kind of thing you're seeing here, okay? All right. Okay. So building up, building up, building up, full bloom. Okay, so now I'm going to play the whole video with the sacred geometry overlaid. Okay, ready?
By Ed and Melinda Party. It shows the ball of light for about 20 seconds before it disintegrates.
So I don't know if you caught that, but in my view, it pulsates between the non-radiating boundary, the apple, the inner vortex of the two what I call fat Oreos in Bingeran Huang's work, and the collapsed core structure. Exactly what we see in physical manifestation in Bin Huang's reactor. Exactly. They are the kind of like points at which it kind of breaks down. It's breaking down in several steps, but it's stable pulsating between the apple and the non-radiating boundary, as it's probably capturing energy and operating. So we're going to play this through.
By Ed and Melinda Party. It shows the ball of light for about 20 seconds before it disintegrates.
This, to me, is the most important ball lightning video ever taken. It shows the electrodynamics at work and what they do to the environment around it. There is no machine in this structure. There is no machine in this structure.
By Ed and Melinda Party. It shows the ball of light for about 20 seconds before it disintegrates.
Okay. So I think probably what we need to do is have a look to see what happens with these. Okay. So the 3 frames I've got here, these are the partial clips. This is a partial clip. Okay. From what you look at here, you can see what I would say is clearly 3 structures, and there might be something here. And of course, as we noticed here in this one, you can't really see the one at the behind very easily. Okay, it can get pretty weak, the one behind. Okay, so one can be clear, one can be nearly clear, and one can be behind. This is only a 3 subtor structure. It can be 4, it can be 5, it can be 6. So we'll go here. This, I think there might be one here, but we don't quite see it. All right. And the reason I'm saying that is because in this one, which is further on in the sequence, it looks like there might be 4. And in this one, it really kind of does look like there's 4. Okay. And you've got to remember that what you're looking at here is the subsphere. The subsphere. Okay. So I've color adjusted this. This is lighter and contrast. It's just lighter with more contrast. So it's the exact same frame. So you can see the kind of Vesica Pisces area in here, and then the top and bottom. Okay, if I flip this over, we can see here, and what I've done is I've aligned the sacred geometry here. Okay, now the subtors, their non-radiating boundary is exactly and precisely this structure here. So the non-radiating boundary, the large area on the subtors, is exactly the radius of the fat Oreo. So I'm going to overlay this now onto here, and it is a precise match. It is a precise match. That is to say, within these are basically picture elements, right? And it might be that there are, when the video is taking the video, it might be combining several frames within a few microseconds of each other, or even tighter, to slightly try and attempt to get a higher resolution. But I would argue that this black spot here and this white spot is noise on the video frame. So these are individual pixels. So you've got to accept that this is not a perfect representation. Where that kind of falls down is it's a little bit smoother here. And I just hope they haven't used any AI on the original film. But I'm arguing that what we are seeing here is that the central sub non-radiating boundaries are exactly and precisely correct, and that the outer boundary, which isn't clear here, but we're going to see me adjust that in a second by putting it back to its normal non-inverted state, but changing it to darker rather than lighter in contrast. And we can see around this central structure, there is a larger area. There is a larger area. So again, what I'm going to do is overlay the sacred geometry with the fractal substructures here, and you can see how it perfectly fits. This darker area around here is the area which is enclosed by the fractal level above. Okay. Again, here, this is darker contrast and inverted in this case. So we have our object here, and we've got our substructures. The substructures are scaled to the correct size for this, and I've overlaid them on there. Okay. Now, I hope you can see that. I don't know whether you can, but I will share the slides, and so you'll be able to have these for your viewing pleasure. Okay. Now, I'm going to go into 3D now, and just to show you what I'm talking about in 3D, so that's going to be easier for you to grasp. Let me see what we have here. 4 level. Now, in these models, I have the non-radiating boundary of the substructures at the inner boundary of the of the double layer, so it doesn't quite meet in the center. Okay, so when you look at this, you've got to imagine that these the non-radiating boundary meets in the perfect center. Okay, there's no space-time that is excluded by these structures. Okay, all right. So these are the 4 substructures. Okay, and they have these Vesica Pisces in here. We can see that in the imagery. Okay, and if I go to the large apple here, that is the large scale apple that we see when it spins down. The cone, which forms part of the emission that comes out from the bottom, and then we can put on the outer shell here. Okay, so essentially it's something like that. Okay, and to show you the inner core is something like this in the area. That's where the magnetic loop goes and produces the toroidal moment coming through the center. All right. Now, if it was a 3-order structure, I would get rid of this one, and I would go to here, and I've got this as a 3-2. Maybe I'll do a 3-3, 3-3. Okay, there we go. So this would be a 3 structure. So, and it might be that as it's energized and de-energized, yeah, again, it should meet in the middle, but it doesn't. It should meet in the middle because this is the inner part of the double layer, the plasma double layer. So the outer part of the double layer will meet directly in the middle. Okay. So this is kind of basically what you are seeing, in my view, when we are looking at this observation by Melinda Pardee and Edward Pardee here.
By Ed and Melinda Pardee. It shows the ball of light for about 20 seconds before it disintegrates.
As demonstrated here.
By Ed and Melinda Pardee. It shows the ball of light for about 20 seconds before it disintegrates.
Okay. And I believe that the same thing is going on with these. This may be 3 or 4. But I believe it's completely consistent with the hypothesis. So that means that this series of videos, and let me just check what was said by Hal Puthoff here. He said, what's been happening recently is that we have upgraded our sensor systems on our fighter craft, and these images that are now picked up with our advanced sensor systems can begin to see the actual structure of the energy field around the craft, which in the past they would not have been able to do. Okay, so the reality is here, Hal Puthoff is essentially possibly only showing a video of a ball lightning. And that would kind of make sense. If you wanted to do disclosure without doing disclosure, and without telling people that it's a tour of tours, and that the tour in the tour of tours is also a tour of tours, If you didn't want to say that, you would just send that video out. You would saying, this is the energy structure. And this energy structure, this fractal magnetohydrodynamic structure, which has a fractal toroidal moment, absolutely 100% they are saying it's responsible for teleportation, faster than light travel, propulsion, unlimited energy, all of the above. All of the above. Transmedium travel, the biological effects, anti-gravity, time and space distortions, everything. Hypersonic travel. He's saying that this right here is what does it. Now he could, as I say, just be sharing a ball lightning. Why do I say that? Because we have 100% one-for-one matching proof. We know these are fractal toroidal geometries. They're fractal magnetohydrodynamic structures that produce fractal toroidal moments. And you will see mainstream peer-reviewed journals that show this can do cloaking. Means it can disappear from view. Can't really take a photo of it. 100% certain this is what it is. I don't know how clear I have to be. This is what it is. All of the facts fit. Even when they come from the future, they're going to fit. When they come from the past, they're going to fit. Because this is nature. This is what it does. So, I shared a video by character called the UFO, the Dark Side of UFO Disclosure. I shared the link, and in that video, it shared several people. So Bob Bigelow here, Jacques Vallée, Harold Puthoff here, and I think this guy over here is Tim Ryan. I don't really know who he is. And in the next frame, it shows, apparently this was in August 1996. This was the year after they classified the NG patent of Warren and Cooley. Tim Ryan, Hal Puthoff here. Jacques Vallée. Shelley Wadsworth, I don't know who that is. Colm Kellner, I don't know who that is. Bob Bigelow. Eric Davis. So we have Eric Davis, Jacques Vallée, and Hal Puthoff here. Bob Bigelow. Okay. Here we have Russell Targ. Russell Targ is the one that in 2023 reported that Hal Puthoff was a US Naval Intelligence officer. Kit Green, don't really know who he is, and Pat Price. These are all sort of people that you might know. I don't know. Over here we have Phil Corso. Apparently this is the guy that wrote the book on all the things that they got from the so-called Nazi UFO. Sorry, did I say that? I mean the Roswell crash. And here is Hal Puthoff. George Knapp, he's been in Congress recently. Okay. This is, I should remember him. And John, who's this? You know who this is. Yeah. This is John Alexander here. Now, on the right, we have another person that was brought over by Hal Puthoff's team, other than the world expert in ball lightning, Dr. George Eagley, who I know very well. That was Uri Geller. Uri Geller. And who is this character with Uri Geller? Guesses? Anyone know who it is? Who is it? Who is it? Anyone know who that is? Yes, Andrei Puharich. Andrei Puharich. It was Andrei Puharich who brought over Uri Geller to work on the psychic spy program with Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ, etc. Okay? So here we go. We have Hal Puthoff working with Uri Geller. Okay, not Bill Crosby. Here's Uri Geller's book, a book on Uri Geller by Andrei Puharich. And we have several other characters there. Hal Puthoff and co. In there. And again, a very young Andrei Pucharich here. Andrei Pucharich wrote a book on magic mushrooms, specifically the Amanita. Yeah. Now here, in this image, the guy doing the presentation knew that this was Hal Puthoff, looking more like he does today, and Eric W. Davis. This chap here, I don't know who's that chap here. Is that one of the previous guys we had? I think it might have been, is it Kit Green or something? It might have been Kit Green, I don't know. Kit Green are looking a little older. I don't know, maybe it is, I don't know. And I don't know who this is, but of course over here you've got Hal Puthoff in the images I was showing you earlier that are actually in the documentary, and Lou Elizondo and there. So he doesn't know who this is, but I know who this is. I know who this. Can anyone guess? Yes, well done, Simon. Well done. You get the prize. I don't know what the prize is. That is George Hathaway. I immediately recognized him when the person said, "Oh, I don't know who this is," from his telltale moustache, his height, and his gait, the way he's standing. Why do I know that? Because I spent 1 week with him in Toronto. And that's when he gave me these 5 signed books here. That will be part of the offerings for the Kickstarter for the book on John Hutchison's work. Okay, it won't be discussing the kind of thing that is being discussed by George Hathaway here. Okay, so yes, it is George Hathaway, no less. Well done, Simon. Okay, so so we have quite the cast of characters here, and of course, another person this guy talks about, which was connected with all these people, is Tom Bearden here, Tesla Shield, showing this extra low frequency magnetic wave induced bubble where missiles and craft cannot penetrate it, and also you can do explosions with it. Okay, and he's talking about these 5 observables of Lou Elizondo, and we can see this image again. Okay, now who are we talking about? We're talking about Tom Bearden, this guy here, Tom Bearden. I think probably I could find that image that's in that previous thing in one of his presentations here, probably from the 1980s, somewhere in here. Anyway, scalar weaponry. There we go. That's the image in black and white. It's on page 258 of Fer de Lance. Okay, just to show you I'm not making it up. There we go. Same image. Okay. Right. So all of these people are connected and working together. Of course, Tom Bearden, John Alexander, Hal Puthoff, Ken Shoulders, you know, all of these people, all of them, all of the above, all of these people here, all of these, yeah, all working with the Ken Shoulders and John Hutchison at various times. Okay. So those weren't what interested me the most in this whole thing. It is good to see these connections, particularly the connection with Andrei Pucharich, because as I said to you recently, you should probably read Andrei Pucharich's work. But I have a dirty little secret. I really hadn't done, and I haven't even read much of it, and we're going to read it together tonight because something happened in that video. I have used Andrei Pucharich talking about ortho-rotation of atoms and teleportation in reference to like the work of John Hutchison and the Philadelphia experiment in kind of sort of roundabout ways. I used that in my Cosmic Summit presentations. I did not look for another video when I looked at that video. That video was the video that I just needed that clip. I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't. But I saw something in this video regarding the dark aspects of disclosure. And it was this. What do you think it was? It was this. Boom! Can you see something? What can you see? Can you see it? What can you see? I'm going to blow it up. Here we go. What can you see? What can you see? Very good. A kind of yin-yang. Specifically, what can you see? I only see Lorentz force. Of course. Very good, Carmen Magnetra. You can see Avisa Pisces. Very good. Very good. Now, I have to say, I have drawn this structure as badly as this on a number of occasions. I'd say my daughter has never drawn it this badly. Not for the last 3 years, and she's only 10. Okay? And this is abominably low resolution. Abominably low resolution video. But I actually made a living from working out what was on the in an image for 3D recreation and reverse engineering. So I don't know whether I got lucky, but just looking at this, I see some things in here. Okay. The first thing I see, before we get on to the meaty bit, is this. It says AIDS, and I don't know if you can believe whether you can see it or not, but this is HLTV. Yeah, 3. HLTV3. What is HLTV3? What is HLTV3? You can probably guess that it's human. Lymphatic. HLTV3 is the original name for the AIDS virus. Okay. Now, why is he talking about that? And in fact, what attracted me to this particular slide is I went to look for every video, and maybe someone can find it. Maybe someone can find it. I went to look to every video, and there's like 1 or 2 or 3 videos in this clip, in this sequence, where what you see here on the screen is actually discussed. But this and this is not discussed. It's just not discussed. It's like they've cut that bit out. You know, when Christopher P. Tinsley in 1996 was interviewing Martin Fleischmann in Infinite Energy, the same journal as this, yeah. When he was interviewing him, he asked him, what were you really doing? And he says, well, we were doing cold fusion, but we were doing that as part of 4 things. We were doing the behavior of electrons in metals, superconductivity, and anti-gravity. He was doing superconductivity and anti-gravity. I can tell you 100% they are both related. 100% certainly. 100%. Martin Fleischmann was researching the same phenomena. But it's the only time in that 3-page interview where Martin Fleischmann talks, there's no interjection by Christopher P. Tinsley. There's a ... and it goes back to Martin Fleischmann. It's like there was a whole discussion on, let's say, anti-gravity, which was the subject brought up. And it's not in the reported interview. It's not in the reported interview. Why? It's a bit like this video here. This video here. I cannot find any point when Andrei Pucharich discusses this part of the blackboard. I can see him rubbing it out. I can see him rubbing it out, but I can't see him discussing it. Now, I thought I did find a document on Andrei Pucharich, which I did have a look at briefly, and then thought I'd park that for a different day. And we're going to look at that. Here's the first thing that's in there, which is related to the bit that's at the bottom left. there's two intersecting wave beams. You know what? That looks a lot like Tom Bearden's interfering electromagnetic waves. And when you look at the clip, that I will put into the blog, it is what he's discussing. He's discussing the interference of two extra low frequency waves. That's what he's discussing. And right here in Tom Bearden's book, you'll find it. I don't know whether I'm going to find it, but we're going to find it. Of course, this is 1985 presentations here. 1985. And the book that I'm about to go through a little bit with you is also from 1985. Yeah, there you go. Two interfering waves. It's not his best image. Normally he likes to draw them going over the planet. There we go. And it's into the interference zone where you can make things disappear and make explosions and all kinds of things. What does that look like? Does that look like a little bit like that plasmoid in the Bogdanovich work? Looks a bit like it. Looks a bit like it. Okay. So HTLV3 is the old name for the virus now known as human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. The retrovirus that causes acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS. It is a type of human T-cell lymphatic virus. Human T-cell lymphatic virus, that's where the HTLV comes from. That preferentially infects T4 lymphocytes, which are critical to the immune system. The name HTLV3 was officially replaced by the term HIV in 1986 to avoid confusion with other HTLV viruses. And what he's saying here in the book that we're going to look at in a minute is other workers have found that harmless lymphotropic viruses can be switched with specific ELF frequencies to become the HLTV3 virulent forms. Another ELF frequency can switch the HTLV3 virus back to an innocuous form. He's saying you can induce this disease electromagnetically. And this is something that I wrote a blog about on Steemit in 2018, I think it was, about disease induction by electromagnetic waves. Okay. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Because what does it show up here? ELF bubble. Extra low frequency bubble. Extra low frequency bubble. What is a bubble? What is a bubble? Well, it's not a circle. A bubble is a 3D object. How do you get a 3D object from interacting electromagnetic waves in the form of extra low frequency? Why is it relevant that he's showing a circle around this? This is what he's talking about. And then, can anyone work out what this is? Can anyone hear this? Yes, it probably is 7.82 hertz, yes. No, I think it's 7.82 hertz. Yes, you're probably right. Schumann resonance. Okay. To get a stable bubble, you need to invoke the thinking of John Archibald Wheeler when he's talking in his 1990 video, early 2000s maybe, 1990s I think, that I have used in my Sochi Sochi ICCF 25 presentation and in my 2024 Cosmic Summit presentation. That is to say, he's saying when you get these structures together, if you push them together you need more and more power. And then if you there's two things that can happen. One, they can collapse into what he calls a black hole, or they can explode and fall apart. But there is another state that they can be in, which is neither of those two. And it's called a virial state. And this is valid for any system, such like an electron all the way up to a galaxy. There is a balance between the energy required to keep the system together and not collapse, but not too much energy such that it blows apart. And this is this is like Bible text. It's like, do not take any more than you need, right? Do not take any more than you need. Nature works on this principle. It takes typically no more than it needs. And this is true of this particular structure here. Okay? This must be, for a stable ball structure, for the time that it is stable, it must be compliant with virial theorem. Specifically, virial theorems tells us that exactly what the balance of forces or energy is required for a massive system to remain stable, neither exploding apart nor collapsing into a point over long periods of time. Okay? Simple way to think about it is for a huge system held together by gravity, a planet, star, galaxy, cluster, etc., or by electromagnetic forces, a plasma, the electrons in an atom, etc., if the average energy, motion, heat, pressure is too high, the system flies apart. If the average kinetic energy is too low, gravity or attraction wins, the system collapses unstable. The virial theorem gives the precise balance point where the two are in equilibrium. Okay? So, I want you to learn a new thing. Go away, bit of homework for you. Learn about the virial theorem, because this is how these things are stabilized and are able to exist for long periods of time. Right. I'm going to pull up this book now because it goes into some very interesting areas which we know and love. Not there. And I didn't want to do that. And I want to go here. And I want to go to here. Right. So the book is called let me see if I can get to the top of this. It's actually a long book. It has 344 pages. And we're going to go here. And we're going to go here. And it's called Extra Low Frequency Magnetic Model of Matter and Mind. The Origin of Life and the Art of Healing. Theory, Experiments, and Proofs. And I will give you the link to be able to go and get this in a little while. But it's all typewritten. It is from 1987, early 1987, February 1987. So this is shortly after he gave that presentation that we were just looking at in 1985. So I thought maybe somewhere in this book there will have something that looks a bit like that thing that he drew on the page. This thing which he drew on the page, which we have been discussing here. Yeah, maybe he has something to do with that, because we know that that is a magnetohydrodynamic structure, and that is creating a bubble, an ELF bubble. This is the most important bubble. Okay, the most important bubble. All right. So, right off the bat, he's going, life originated on primitive Earth from 4 atoms, carbon, oxygen, and hydrogen, and nitrogen, which produced 4 molecules, CH4, methane, NH3, ammonia, H2O, water, and H2 hydrogen. These molecules are known to exist in interstellar space. These 4 molecules have also been formed into amino acids under laboratory conditions. 20 amino acids are the molecular foundation of all proteins. The unique feature of amino acids produced in living things is that they all have levorotatory, i.e. they will rotate plane polarized light waves to the left. In trying to understand this asymmetrical feature of life energies, I observed that all of the antagonistic psychological pairs of atomic elements are polarized magnetically. Table 1 shows this relationship ranked by proton number. Table 2 shows these physiological pairs ranked by nuclear magnetic increments and 4 Bohr magnetons. All of the values for mu are the ground state values. Okay, this is all very interesting. You should read it. Okay. Introduction into how the author got into cancer research, electrostimulation of humans with deafness, development of energy cell to split water into H2 and O2. Very interesting. The energy cell developed into a crucible for the biochemical origin of life, the chemistry of the origin of life, the role of O2 and O3's ozone in the origin of life, O3 found to be an effective cheap treatment for cancer in mice, discovery of quantosomes in cancer cells by Dr. blah blah blah, the rare rate of ELF magnetic field in causing cancer, tables and figures, Appendix A, reprint from Science, Appendix B, nuclear magnetism references. Okay. So this is what you got here. He's got patents, method of splitting water molecule according to the theory of phonon hydroamplification of stimulated emission radiation called the phasor. Analysis of the phonon generated in water by the TD signal, and so on. Okay. 8 hertz there. All right. Anyway, so I'm looking for a diagram, and I'm not finding it. I'm still not finding it. No, not finding it. Not finding it. Still not. Ooh, what's that? No, not finding it. No, not finding it. No, not finding it. Oh, well, hello. What have we got here? No, not finding it. Not finding it. Okay. All right. I'll spare you, and I'll go right to the end because it's like right at the end. What have we got here? No, not there. Oh, this is the splitting of the water system. Nuclear magnetism, audio and disorder. So this is a reference. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, that's not what I want. Okay. I'm going to get there. It's like right at the end. Of course it would be. I was almost giving up at this point. I thought, no, he's not going to have it in there. Whatever it is, he's not going to have it in there. Oh, he goes here. What's this? The historical positive and negative, the 2 chiral forms of ultimate physical atom. Okay, all right, interesting. What have we got here? This is one of his experiments showing how you can do matching. You can go and see him doing these experiments. Here, he's got these linked quarks and the substructures of quarks. He has a name for those. Okay. Hold on a minute. He's got something. Okay. All right. Now, I'll come back to it, but there is a whole list of things he believes that you can do with this technology. And it's going to make very, very interesting reading. And it starts here. Okay. But we're going to go and skip forward to our diagram, which is over here. What? What? Are you beep kidding me? Are you beep kidding me? What are we seeing here? We are seeing a circle and another circle whose radius intersects with the fulcrum. Okay? This is the basic magnetohydrodynamic structure as written by as giving us the Vesica Pisces here in the center. But what else do you see? What else do you see? What I see is this. Going up through the center of the magnetohydrodynamic structure, you have gravity force. Gravity force. This is where the gravity vector goes through. Exactly there. Okay, now what else do you see? Anyone else get it? Okay, so for people who want to see this link, I have it here. ELF magnetic model of matter and the origin of life and the art of healing. bit.ly.ap-M, little o, capital M. Okay. Well, isn't that a thing? Isn't that a thing? We have a pyramid-like structure here. Okay. We have a pyramid-like structure here. That is something that is out there. It is something that is out there. A pyramid-like structure. And in fact, he's not got it quite right. He's got 72.5 degrees up here. It's not quite right. Yeah, it's not quite that for the base angles, Laura. To do the proper construction from sacred geometry, and I'm going to show you the derivation there. Give me a second. I'm just going to do this. The proper derivation we'll do here is when you take a Vesica Pisces and you draw a Vesica Pisces built from two circles that fit within the Vesica Pisces. Okay? And then you draw from the center down to the intersection between the Vesica Pisces and a straight line that goes through the center point of the Vesica Pisces. So zooming into that, you get the 51.64 degrees. Now, everyone will say, oh, that's not quite right for the Khufu measured slope, which is, 51.8444 degrees. That is the generally agreed figure. But Khufu is not the only pyramid, the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau. There's Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. Okay? Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. Menkaure is quite a bit smaller. The two big ones are Khufu and Khafre. Now, Khufu is 51.8444. Khafre, and by the way, 51.8444 compared to 51.61 is only less than 0.5%. In fact, it's 0.643%. That is to say, by doing this construction, you are over the massive size of the pyramid. You could argue that they got it wrong by 0.463%, which is incredible. However, the Menkaure pyramid is 51.340. 51.340. It's not the same. And if you average the side angle of the Menkaure and the Khufu pyramid, you get 51.59 degrees. That is to say 0.02 degrees out. Basically insignificant. And in fact, the reality is that the Khafre pyramid is actually 53.167 degrees. So it's quite a lot larger than the other two. Okay? So if you think Khufu is correct and the average of Menkaure and Khufu is incorrect, then Khafre is really incorrect. Okay? So what we have here is something, for me, that absolutely blew my mind. Why? Because to construct the correct angle, which would be 51.61, or with maybe some extra decimal places, this is within the limits of my 3D software to do the measurement. Okay? Which is almost identical to the average between the Khufu and the Menkaure pyramid. To do that construction, you have to construct a Vesica Pisces with the bounding circles inside the center of another Vesica Pisces. What does that tell you? That tells me that the Egyptians were showing you it has to be a fractal structure. The actual angle dimension construction methodology shows you it is a fractal structure. Of course, I've shown before how the overall thing in Ode centered, the actual geometry of the two-order fractal electrodynamics structure exactly represents all of the important structures within the Great Pyramid. That is to say, every single aspect is in a necessary place for it to operate. Even the interaction between the apple and this circle down here is exactly and correctly in the place where those two things meet. These ports go outside of the apple into this area. The boundary exactly and precisely is where they put the glowing beams on Masonic imagery, including in the $1 bill. Okay. So why is this relevant to what we are talking about here? Because he is saying very specifically that out of this geometry, you get the gravitational beam coming out. Hence, you can see my little beam coming out of the top of the pyramid here. Okay, now, what does he say that this understanding permits you to do? What can this theory predict? The ELF field theory, which, by the way, will produce bubbles. Bubbles that look like this, which are maintained in the virial theorem, maintains them because they are in balance with their environment. That is to say, not too much power to cause them to fall apart, not too much power to cause them to collapse. Okay? It is an extra low frequency bubble. The bubble is caused by magnetohydrodynamics. Okay? This produces a gravity beam. The ELF field theory presented is expected to make rational observation possible and scientifically explain the following effects. In the left-hand column, we list the phenomenon that needs explanation, and in the right-hand column, we present a hypothesis of scientific explanation predicted by the theory, i.e. a plasmon microstructure made up of magnetic bubbles. A plasmon microstructure made up of magnetic bubbles and magnetic monopoles organized according to the fractal geometry of Mandelbrot. I'm not so sure I agree with that fractal geometry of Mandelbrot, but everything else I can get behind. Magnetic monopoles, fractal geometry, magnetic bubbles, plasmon microstructure. Right. You're probably all saying, what is a plasmon? What is a plasmon? I know that's the question that you should have on your mind. What is a plasmon? A plasmon is a quantum of plasma oscillation. Essentially, the collective vibration of free electrons in a material, most commonly in metals or doped semiconductors. Okay, all right, fine. Phenomenon. Origin of biochemical life with build-up of biochemistry to DNA molecules. Self-organizing 8 Hz magnetic soliton. Magnetic soliton? Magnetic soliton? So what is a magnetic soliton? A magnetic soliton in plasmonics is a donut-shaped, boom! A donut-shaped, self-trapped surface plasmon in which the energy is carried primarily by a swirling magnetic field torus at the center. The electric field is looped around it, and the whole object barely scatters light, because it excites almost no electric dipole. It is currently one of the hottest concepts in nonlinear nanophotonics and plasmonic realization of the long sought after non-radiating anapole soliton. What is an anapole bubble? Non-radiating void. Because the electric dipole moment is almost perfectly cancelled dynamic anapole condition, the entire soliton scatters 1,000 to 1 million times less light than a normal plasmon of the same near field strength. From the far field, the soliton like a tiny invisible bubble. Light passes through the region almost as if nothing is there, while locally the fields are enormous. This is the closest plasmonics has come to true invisibility cloak hotspot or non-radiating optical bubble. So straight away, we have a thing that's responsible for life, and more than that, it's actually responsible for Kervran transmutation that made calcium from potassium so that chickens could lay eggs with a hard shell in the 1950s. Earth's magnetic field is 7.8 Hz. This pulsation plus heat energy produces life forms at thermal vents. Okay. Control of go, no-go functions of DNA, including go, no-go signals for cancer. Each genetic segment of DNA has a specific ELF to go to. No-go frequency control operating in the form of magnetic bubbles. Boom! That is what I was saying in 2017. The magnetic bubble is created by the fractal toroidal moment. This has a specific frequency, which I would argue is the specific encoded toroidal moment wave. That is able to turn on and turn off genes. Muscular chemistry, propulsion and motor action. Circularly polarized molecules contracted and relaxed by, respectively, plasmon microbubble build-up and collapse. I could not agree more. Sensory detection. Photonic electronic plasmon microbubble events as in 3. Coordination of information leading to intelligence. Coordination of information leading to intelligence. Bell interconnectedness principle of non-local nature similar to 6. Non-local nature similar to 6. He is saying that these magnetic bubbles, which come from, you will know 100% this is fractal toroidal magnetohydrodynamic structures producing fractal toroidal moments, allows for non-local communication. Hal Puthoff, after finishing the Psychic Spy program and handing it over, maybe not finishing it, to Science Applications International Corporation in 1992, within 9 months published his patent for scalar and vector potential communication, and in there it shows a structure that produces an anapole moment. That is a coil, induction coil going one way and induction coil going the other way. 2 capacitive plates oscillate both, you get an anapole moment, which is the basic function of the toroidal moment. Okay, 100% certainly This was known knowledge in 1993. 1993. And it's saying here, a person that worked on the psychic spy program for the CIA is saying that the toroidal magnetic bubble is the thing that does this. Right. And it says, as in 6. We're going to have a look at 6 here. 6. Telepathy. The better a telepathist is shielded by a Faraday cage, the higher the scores. The higher the scores. Electro low frequency fields at 8 Hz will pass through a Faraday cage, as will quark, neutrino, and monopole fields. Monopole fields. Non-local fields. Transmission of information through a tubular plasmon world line. I would argue this is the flux loop that comes out of one of these structures. Psychokinesis. Quark domain polarization in n-dimensional axes. Mobile center of consciousness. Mind out of body experience can be induced by 8 Hz light pulses to the eyes. Self-organizing microsolitons of body can decouple from fundamental particles. Microsolitons. Teleportation of a person or an object. Teleportation of a person or an object. Hyperdimensional orthorotation of quark polarities. Okay, so essentially in a fractal toroidal structure, it is rotating, according to this understanding, the quarks polarities so that then they do not interact with anything. You can move it as if it doesn't exist through other matter and then unrotate them. Just spin the structure down. I think we are that close to complete beep magic. To complete beep magic. Precognition, I like this one, and clairvoyance. This is me. I've been doing this all my life. Hyperdimensional orthorotation of quarks to yield advanced waves. Aura as viewed in medical diagnosis. Magnetic bubbles as quantum plasmon, where optical coupling occurs, and governing equation 6 is this. Healing by laying on of hands. I mean, seriously, guys? Seriously? Healing by laying on of hands. ELF DNA resonance, which is frequency specific. So the healing would effectively come from you creating information patterns into your toroidal moment exotic vacuum objects that are coming out of your hands that are attuned to either switching on or switching off genes or in your body to deal with a healing process or stop a pathogen or to switch off problems in the body. These are all things that I've speculated these things can do, and he's saying they can do them, and he's saying that the specific thing that do them are these sacred geometry bubbles. Rooting effect, where a trained person cannot be picked up by another person. Increase in gravitational constant by an act of will in positive polarization of quarks. So this is someone making themselves so heavy so that you cannot move them. They're basically locked onto the earth. Obviously, you've got the opposite, levitation of a person. Decrease in gravitational constant by negative polarization of the quarks and preons. Dematerialization and the converse effect. Orthorotation of quarks into hyperspace and reverse orthorotation into 4D normal space. So that's basically what I've just said is teleportation. That's basically what I've just said is teleportation. And the thing that does it is the magnetic bubbles. And I'm pretty minded to agree with him. Firewalking. ELF micromagnetic bubbles organized into a soliton plasmon on the surfaces of the skin and on the coals, where the governing equation is this. This is a dispersion relation. This is so accurate. When you understand the science of a magnetic bubble and how it's formed and the solitons, dispersion relation is absolutely exactly the correct phrase to be using. Metal bending and metal fracture. You're still in the house, John. You're still in. Here we go. We've got Uri Geller. Metal bending and metal fracture. Warping of electronic proton domains, plasmon polarization. Again, this is all solitons. Hypnosis and trance. ELF soliton plasmon hyperpolarization at synapses. Phantasmagoria, monsters, tulpas, and ectoplasm. I can see Simeon Hine really liking this. Dispersion of normal self-organizing ELF bubble soliton plasmon. So this is phantasmagoria, monsters, tulpas, and ectoplasm. Dispersion of normal self-organizing ELF bubble soliton plasmon. It's so clear. It's so clear. If you've been following me, this is just like, this is just going to be so clear to you. Geopathic zones which induce cancer. Due to beat frequency differences between two underground water streams, he actually does talk about this in the video, actually, each one of which is off 8 Hertz resonance. Example, 7 Hertz and 10 Hertz equals 3 Hertz. Okay, so this is a beat frequency. So this is induces cancer. So basically, the water, something, and he discusses, he doesn't quite know whether it's when the water is coming together, crossing over, or going next to each other, but he's saying that the beat frequency between their internal resonance can cause cancer. Paranormal photos. High resolution of domain formation of plasmons guided by telepathy. Memory in living and non-living objects. Psychotronic systems. Heard a lot about psychotronics. Stationary field magnetic bubbles at resonance and polarization of quarks and preons. Preons, I believe, are the substructures in a quark. So, where is it? So your up and down quark are contained of preons. A new concept is presented which integrates all biological effects under one general theory. The theory is testable for each of the mysterious phenomena of life. It is expected that within 2 years of field, clinical, and laboratory research, enough data will be accumulated and the theory tested to lay the foundations for a revolution in the scientific understanding of the living process, including healing. The first test of the theory is to design, build, and test a device to mimic the effects of a healer's 8 Hertz magnetic field radiation. Such a device should be capable of performing some primitive form of healing. This is subject to the following section. Okay, so you can understand that if you can create plasmoids of the right type, with the right information contained within them, you could affect health. Okay. Right. I want to show you some mainstream papers now. Some mainstream papers. But basically, if you do the maths and you create a recursive fractal geometry, these effects are scale invariant. They produce increasing magnetic vectors in a very small, infinitesimally small, well, not infinitesimally small, but very small section in the middle. And a magnetic plasmon soliton naturally forms a subdiffraction bubble. And that is dark in its intensity. It's blazing hot in the magnetic field and almost invisible on the outside. It's one of the most counterintuitive objects in modern nanophotonics. A self-sustained nanoscale bubble of concentrated magnetism wrapped in light that refuses to scatter. If you have a polyhedral cluster of magnetic plasmon solitons, which is what you would call a fractal toroidal geometry, this naturally self-assembles. It can be engineered, and it engineers into a higher toroidal structure that possesses, one, a collective giant toroidal magnetic moment, a large central bubble of darkness and concentrated magnetic energy, and a near-perfect non-radiating anapole-like character. And apparently, and you'll see in mainstream papers, this is one of the most actively pursued objects in nonlinear nanophotonics and topological plasmonics, because it gives you a stable, reconfigurable, macroscopic magnetic bubble made purely of light, in those cases, on a chip. And if you make these toroidal magnetic plasmon solitons, and their multi-soliton clusters, they are the most scale invariant optical objects ever proposed. In the right material system, you can really have exactly the same donut within a magnetic bubble physics, whether the structure is 5 nanometers across or 50 microns across. The equations are no different. That is why people are seriously taking plasmon soliton fractals and self-similar hierarchical toroidal states in talking about them in the current literature. If you do a recursive 90 degrees rotated ring of rings or ring of rings construction, it turns the impressive 10 to the 4 times scale invariance up to 7 to 10 orders of magnitude. With perhaps more gain. You get a single toroidal physical object that is made of light, which can scale from 15 nanometers and basically all the way up. And when you do it with plasma or quark-gluon plasma, things go absolutely ridiculous. And you can get the 10 to the 15 Tesla scales that are necessary to do the magnetic disconfinement of baryons. So I'm now going to look for just another couple of underlined segments in this book. For some reason, someone decided to underline some segments here. And I will... Okay, magnetic charge. Okay, is maybe up. Okay. Let's try that. No, okay, all right, fine. What page was this on? 50. Okay, not there then. 50. Oh, is it really in 50? I don't think it is in 50. Is that on page 50 as in, no, that's 73, so. No, why is that 18? Okay, all right. Well, this is not going to help, is it? What I'm looking for is... Okay, here we go. Extrasensory perception of quarks. here, someone is underlying this. Whoever uploaded this to the Internet Archive underlined some things here. Magnetic charge compensation of baryons. The condition that quarks SU3 singlet bound states of 3 SU3 monopoles is blah, blah, blah. Since SU3 monopole moments are defined by modular blah, 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 monopoles couple to a gauge invariant SU3 scalar field tensor in abelian-like manner, obeying Dirac's equation for an abelian monopole. Okay. The omegon mass, omegons are substructures of quarks, would have to exceed 10 to the 10 gigaelectron volts in order for the theoretical nucleon to be less than the upper limits. This would imply that quarks are massive, contrary to the current estimates about this. Okay. Anyway, he's talking about monopoles. We like talking about monopoles. Because a monopole looks like one of these 2000 crop circles, like this one. This is where you get 2 electrons coming in into a phase singularity. And when you get 3 of these magnetic bubbles joining together, you get an anti-gravity craft, or you get one of these, or you get one of these. Don't you? Or you get one of these, don't you? Right. I'm going to run through a couple of modern papers now, so that you can get an idea. This is an old paper we looked at before. Is it going to let me put that up there? Yes. This is an old paper we looked at before. Our AC Holt, I mentioned it earlier, for UFO propulsion. AC Holt wrote a 1999 paper with our 2 characters in our documentary recently. And this is the magnetic reconnection at the phase singularity. This produces the overall bubble structure, which I have defined. So I'm going to find the next one which I want, which is... This is Bogdanovich's paper here. And water jet, monopole, flux loop between them. This is a dark soliton. No light can come from it. This is the plasmoid. This is a plasmoid in different progression. This is the 2-day-old moving soliton, and so on. This is a helical beam coming out of the plasmoid. This is a plasmoid's outer sheath being separated from its inner core, which has moved over here, passing through a dielectric barrier. Anyway, some modern papers. Plasmonic toroidal dipole response under radially polarized excitation. This is published June the 26th, 2015, by Yunjun Bao, Jing Zhu, and Zheyu Fang. Plasmonic toroidal resonances has attracted growing interest because of its low loss electromagnetic properties and potential high sensitive nanophotonic applications. However, the realization in a metamaterial requires 3-dimensional complicated structural design so far. In this paper, we design a simple metal dielectric metal MIM sandwich structure, nanostructure, which exhibits strong toroidal dipolar resonances under radially parallelized excitation. The toroidal dipole moment as the dominant contribution for the scattering is demonstrated by a mirror image method and further analyzed by Lagrangian hybridization model. The proposed toroidal configuration also shows highly tolerant for misalignment between the structure center and the incident light focus. Our study proves the way for toroidal plasmonic applications with the cylindrical vector beams. Okay. The toroidal dipole moment, characterized by currents flowing on the surface of a torus along the meridians, was first considered by Zeldovich to explain parity violation in the weak interaction and nuclear physics. the weak interaction and nuclear physics. So the toroidal moment is what explains the weak interaction and nuclear physics, according to this guy who's just like the total hero, right? Go and read about Zeldovich. The static toroidal moment has been found in many natural materials, including ferroelectric, ferromagnetic, and magnetoelectric structures, as well as biological materials, since the toroidal dipole moment violates both space inversion and time reversal symmetries. Although the importance of static toroidal moment in solid-state systems and particle physics has been recognized, the dynamic toroidal dipole moment in the classical electromagnetism is less known. Metamaterial, an artificial sub-wavelength structure that is engineered to have properties not available in natural materials, has become the subject of growing interest owing to the number of appealing applications, such as artificial magnetic response, cloaking, boom, negative refraction, and perfect absorber. Wow. Okay. Peking University, Beijing. So what they have here is a gold layer, a silicon dioxide layer, and 6 gold cylinders. Okay? And here, structure of the toroidal structure and its optical response under radially polarized light. A symmetrical view of the toroidal structure composed of gold hexamer and a metallic mirror separated by a dielectric layer. The diameter and thickness is blah, blah, blah. The intensity of the field profiles, radially polarized light, the black arrows is the field. And here in D, the simulated magnetic field at the center of the dielectric layer and at the resonance peak of 7.85 nanometers. The black arrows represent the vectors of the magnetic field. So this produces basically a hexagon magnetic field structure and a phase singularity in the center. The phase singularity in the center. It is known that a gold disk and a bottom layer separated by dielectric spacer can be regarded as a magnetic resonator, MR, in which antiparallel currents are excited in 2 gold layers, resulting in a strong magnetic dipole moment. Okay. Under illumination of radially polarized light, the 6 magnetic electric dipoles are azimuthally radially oriented at the vertices of a hexagon, resulting in non-zero multipolar moments of electric quadrupole and toroidal dipole, as shown in figures inset of 2b. 2b. Okay. So he's showing where the light comes in at different angles. The blue shift with increasing of the gap indicates that the magnetic dipole coupling strength at Km exceeds the electric dipole coupling strength, showing the overall coupling is attractive. Thus, with increasing of the gap, the coupling is less attractive and the resonance wavelength blue shifts. Okay. Right, that's that one. So that's building a toroidal moment type structure. And before I go on to the next one, I want to find a different one. Not that one. So we're going to kill that. No. Okay. Just give me a second. I need to find something which I'm not sure I have up at the moment. Okay, so let me find that. If you want to ask some questions, I might take them now. You're not going to want to miss the image there or the paper I'm just about to show you. Thank you very much. What are your thoughts to Bingus? What are your thoughts on the Standeo Pulse DC toroidal ring allegedly drives you? I've talked about that in the past. I actually had an interchange with him on a X space. Yeah, I think he was on the money. I think it's fair to say he certainly knew something. Mm-hmm. Okay. Not found it yet. I'm hoping to. Ah, this is the one I want. Yes. Okay. Right. This is more recent, so we're moving through the timeline here. Published online, 21st of August, 2018. 2018, yeah. Multipolar passive cloaking by non-radiating anapole excitation. Well, we like that title straight off. This is Anna Ospanova, Giuseppe Labate, Ladausko Matakovits, and Alexei Basharin. Where are they all from? We will have a look. They are from, where are they? National University of Science and Technology, Moscow, Russia, Theoretical Physics and Quantum Technologies. Yeah, all from Russia. Okay, so China and Russia really knocking it out of the park here. In this paper, we demonstrate the relation between cloaking effect and its non-radiating state by considering the destructive multipolar interaction between near-field scattering by bare object and surrounding coating located in its proximity. This cloaking effect is underpinned by anapole mode excitation, and it occurs as destructive interference between the electric dipole moment generated by a bare object, here a central metallic scatter, and the toroidal moment formed inside the cloak, a surrounding cluster of dielectric cylinders. Numerical results show how a cloaking effect based on the formation of an anapole mode can lead to overall non-radiating metamolecule with all dielectric materials in the coating region. Right, this is invisibility, radar invisibility, and possibly even visual invisibility, right? Pioneering works on invisible bodies and transparent objects have strongly contributed to the concept of electromagnetic invisibility that has passed from science fiction to science in the last decade. With the excitation of non-radiating states and the introduction of cloaking devices. Other techniques, such as camouflage, popular for military purposes, have been explored by shaping the object's contour with different designs and acoustic thermal footprint reduction approaches. So basically, electromagnetic cloaking device. Okay. Another invisibility technique is the transparency phenomena inspired by what happens at the quantum level with the incident wave that excites complex level transitions and at the same time interferes destructively with them at resonance. This occurrence leads to sharp and narrow transparency peaks in the absorption spectrum. Similarly, analogous interferences can be implemented in classic systems and gives rise to full transparency according to classical electrodynamics. Depending on the complexity of the system, this effect can be explained as a particular case of phanoresonance, a classical analogues of electromagnetically induced transparency, like metamaterial-induced transparency, plasmon-induced transparency. There we go, we got the words again, and Pitt and others. The interest in non-radiating feature of electromagnetic invisibility has been developed starting from a set of theorems by Devaney and Wolf, highlighting the mathematical properties of non-radiating currents. On the other hand, nowadays, the most exciting invisibility technique is related to cloaking devices where the interaction of the impinging wave with the coating surrounding the object to be hidden leads to the generation of a subset of non-radiating currents. The development of cloaking devices has advanced with the improvement of metamaterials, exploiting the fact that subwavelength blah, 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 blah. Several techniques have been proposed to realize cloaking devices. The most popular of them are the transformation of optics, TO, scattering cancellation, subdivided in plasmonic cloaking, and mantle cloaking. And other approaches have been pursued in the literature. TO is based on the spatial transformation of certain regions, blah, 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 blah. On the other hand, PC exploits blah, 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 blah. Okay. Results. Multipolar cloaking technique. The multipolar cloaking technique is here introduced by considering a simple yet effective model of a general type. Any subwavelength object is characterized by an electric or magnetic dipole moment that well approximates its scattering at the first order of the multipole expansion. In order to suppress the electromagnetic scattered field generated by such an object, one should make it interacting with a medium that exhibits the same kind of multipole moment. In particular, toroidal dipole moment, T, has the same far field properties as the electric dipole moment, P, and enables destructive interference between them in the far field, providing that P is blah, 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 where I keep an imaginary unit, blah, blah, blah. Okay, all right, fine. I'll get to the meat. Essentially, they've got a thing that would turn up on radar and some dielectric things arranged around it to produce a multipole toroidal moment, and that causes it to disappear, effectively. And here we go. If I can get my thing to go where I want it to. This is your money shot. Figure 3, field maps of the Y component analog cylinders of electric field intensity and the absolute value of magnetic field across cylinders axis by PC object A. So A here is the object, okay? Very, very clearly going to see a reflection on our radar. Yes, you are in the way. We can see you're there. And D, all electric cover. Okay, so we've got an absorption reflection there. So basically you're stuffed. Okay, B and E, the cloaking metamolecule. So we've got our dielectric material around, but we haven't got the thing in the middle. So yeah, it's kind of really showing up in a similar way, but opposite to this. However, if we combine the two, there's nothing reflected. It just goes straight through. And here, the waves are not observed unless you're standing right next to it. Okay, so what you're looking at there is the Philadelphia experiment. What you're looking there is the Philadelphia experiment. Right? This toroidal multipole, toroidal moment multipole, is basically cloaking this object in the center. Yes, Nathaniel. Boom. This is what they were doing with the, just on a big scale with the Philadelphia experiment, but they were doing it electromagnetically. Okay. So I have just proven to you that all of the things in the first part of the documentary are due to fractal magnetohydrodynamics and the toroidal dipole moment, fractal toroidal moment. I've just proved to you that the cloaking is to do with that. I've proved to you that the plasma structures and their ability to move and be weightless and glow and self-persist longer than a nuclear blast can are to do with toroidal moment structures, based off actual physical observation of a ball lightning and actual published in the documentary visuals of the propulsion technology for UAPs, okay? Which they say in the documentary are responsible for all of the other magic, okay? And I've just shown you cloaking, which is to do with the toroidal moment, okay? So here, was this the one I just, no, this is the one I've shown you. So I'm going to go to the next one. So we're moving forward in time. We're now in what year is this? This is July 2022, right? No old papers here. Toroidal vortices of light. Toroidal vortices, known as vortex rings, are whirling closed-loop disturbances that form a characteristic ring shape in liquids and gases and propagate in a direction that is perpendicular to the plane of the ring. They are well-studied structures and commonly found in various fluids, gas flows, scenarios in nature. For example, in the human heart, underwater air bubbles, and volcanic eruptions. Here we report the experimental observation of a photonic toroidal vortex as a new solution to Maxwell's equations. The resulting light field has a helical phase that twists around a closed loop, leading to an azimuthal local orbital angular momentum density. That is to say, gets really dense in the middle. The preparation of such an intriguing state of light may offer insights for exploring the behavior of toroidal vortices in other disciplines and find important applications in light-matter interactions, optical manipulation, photonic symmetry and topology, and quantum information. Okay? Toroidal vortices, also known as vortex rings, are intriguing propagating ring shaped structures with whirling disturbances rotating about the ring. Toroidal vortices are not uncommon in nature and science. Indeed, aquarium visitors are often amazed at how dolphins master creating and playing with bubble rings, which are air-filled vortex rings propagating in water. The scientific investigation of vortex rings dates back to 1867, when Lord Kelvin proposed the vortex atom model. After 1.5 centuries, vortex rings are still being actively investigated in a variety of disciplines. For example, in meteorology, vortex rings of wind, rain, and hail are tightly related to the development of microbursts, which pose a great threat to aviation safety. In cardiology, asymmetric redirection of blood flow through the heart resembles a toroidal vortex. Boom! In magnetics, the experimental observation of vortex rings in a bulk magnet has only just been accomplished. So in a bulk magnet, there are vortex rings, opening up possibilities for studying complex three-dimensional 3D solitons in bulk magnets. In photonics and light science, there have been studies in toroidal dipole and multipole excitation in metamaterials. Okay. All right. Well, basically what they do in this paper is they synthesize from a vortex into a ring. So this is a vortex made into a vortex ring. And then they show our lovely toroidal topological charge here going on. This is the phase. This is the phase around the loop, and this is the phase in the poloidal direction. Okay. Just to give credit to these people, it is Chen Hao Wan, Qin Chao, Yan Chen, Andy Chong, and Qiwen Zhan, and they are again at the University of Shanghai, not Beijing this time. Technology, Shanghai, China. So again, China and Russia knocking it out of the park on actually understanding the next generation of science. So what they basically show is they can make these kind of stable sort of solitons in light with their toroidal and poloidal magnetic moments. And I'm going to go to the next paper. Okay, you're getting the idea. And in this one we have, and this is from, when is it? I think this is even more recent. This is from 26th of September 2025. Okay, so we're doing all this in order, you see? Bang up to date. There's me going on about these things in 2017. All of these papers are post-2017. Right? Dynamics of photonic toroidal vortices mediated by orbital angular momenta. Okay. The dynamics of fluidic vortex rings have long captivated researchers because of their complex behavior despite simple structure. Photonic toroidal vortices constitute a family of three-dimensional space-time non-separable structured light fields carrying transverse orbital angular momentum, OAM. However, as solutions to the dispersive Maxwell equations, these wave packets do not survive non-dispersive propagation, and their dynamics remain elusive. In this article, the dynamics of photonic toroidal vortices under various dispersion regimes mediated by transverse and longitudinal OAM, orbital angular momentum, are investigated through simulations and experiments. The results reveal that the motion of a toroidal vortex is strongly affected by longitudinal OAM. The swirling flow destabilizes the toroidal structure under dispersion and induces topological transformations of vortex lines, characterized by an annihilation and subsequent reformation in vacuum. The resonance toroidal vortex exhibits robust propagation, the renascent, that's the reborn from the collapsed structure. Toroidal vortex exhibits robust propagation in vacuum while maintaining its structure. When you see where I'm going with this, it's just going to blow your mind. It is exactly the right answer. It's what we've been saying all along for a long time now, but here they're doing it in September 2025 with light. These findings are supported by experimental validation and highlight the potential of photonic toroidal vortices as controllable channels for directional energy and information transfer. For directional energy. What you mean, like directed energy? Like putting energy into a direction? And information transfer. Introduction. Toroidal vortices, known as vortex rings, are fascinating three-dimensional 3D torus-shaped structures characterized by vortical flow confined around closed vortex lines. Such flow patterns are frequently encountered in natural contexts, in fluid mechanics, manifest in various forms ranging from turbulent flows of liquids and gases, such as smoke rings and cavitation bubbles, to thermally induced formations in mushroom clouds, and biologically produced vortices associated with microscale locomotion, seed dispersal, and cardiovascular flow. Boom! Just what I was saying very recently. In the realm of electromagnetics, two types of toroidal light vortices have attracted wide attention since their experimental creations. One is the vector toroidal pulse, which is visualized as a torus made of electric magnetic field lines, exhibits non-trivial topological textures, and propagation robust dynamics. Another representative structure is the scalar photonic toroidal vortex, characterized by a closed-loop spatiotemporal optical vortex, STOV. This configuration gives rise to a 2 pi phase variation around the surface of the torus in poloidal plane, thereby yielding a transverse orbital angular momentum, OAM, density that is tangent to the vortex line as shown in Figure 1. Let's have a look at Figure 1 then. Oh, there we go. Oh, that looks good, doesn't it? Figure 1, there we go. That's what we want. That's what we're looking at. Okay. Specifically, this one. Okay. A toroidal vortex carrying a toroidal swirl forms a scalar optical Hopfion topology. I'll explain what Hopfion is for those that don't know, which encompasses both transverse and longitudinal orbital angular momentum. It has been proven that the coupling between these orbital angular momentums within a toroidal vortex leads to entirely distinct topological properties in high harmonic generation. It is amazing that fluid vortex rings are capable of holding their morphology for a long time in a calm medium. However, although photonic toroidal vortices can now be readily synthesized in free space, their robust free propagation is still not out of reach, and their dispersive spreading and motion under the interactions of transverse or longitudinal OAMs are not yet investigated. In this study, we reveal that spatiotemporal toroidal vortices exhibit non-trivial dispersive dynamics mediated by the coupling between their transverse longitudinal orbital angular momentum. In the absence of longitudinal orbital angular momentum, the toroidal vortex evolves similarly to conventional STOV pulse. However, the inclusion of longitudinal orbital angular momentum disturbs the flow of the toroidal vortex, fundamentally alters the dispersive behavior, leading to several distinct phenomena. 1. The toroidal vortex becomes highly unstable in both normally and anomalously dispersive media. 2. In vacuum, the vortex line undergoes breakdown and subsequent reconstruction during propagation, and the renascent toroidal vortex robustly preserves its morphology over extended distances. These findings are confirmed in the experiment. Right, I'm going to explain what that really means. Essentially, what they're saying is, when they introduce multi-axis shear in the production of a light normal vortex soliton to induced Hopfian loops, those Hopfian loops introduce instability, and then it breaks up and reforms into a structure that then is somehow magically stable. Somehow magically stable. Essentially, they're doing in light what I suggest you need to do, obviously in light, but also in plasma. And that is, you introduce multi-axis hydrodynamic shear. In this case, multi-axis electrodynamic shear, but ultimately it's all electrodynamic. And so that introduces the instability and the reformation. But what they do not clock, in this work is that there is something going on that is creating orthogonally arranged vortex loops. So those wheels within the big wheel stabilize the overall structure. And that is how it works. And they're just getting up to speed. At the top universities, in the top peer-reviewed journals, they're just getting up to speed. Yeah, gotta love it. Oh dear. So here we go. So for those that don't know what a Hopfion is, a Hopfion wave packet is a topological knot. So let's show you what I'm looking at here. Okay. So there's no Hopfion vibrations here. There's no Hopfions going on here. There's one Hopfion vibration across the whole toroidal there. That's introducing the orbital angular momentum in there. So a Hopfion wave packet. A Hopfion wave packet is a topological knot made of pure light, a diffraction-resistant pulse in which all electrical and magnetic field lines are closed loops that are pairwise linked exactly once, forming a Hopfion vibration in 3D space. It is one of the most exotic known solutions of Maxwell's equations in the vacuum and is currently a hot topic in topological photonics and structured light. So what you have here is no Hopfions, no orbital, angular, orbital angular motions. Here you have 1, and here you have 10. You have 10 loops, 10 loopsly loops, right? So you can see here, 3D profile and phase map of photonic toroidal vortices, ISO intensity profile and phase map of toroidal vortex in A, in different perspectives. So you can see it with the poloidal. B, ISO intensity profile and phase map of photonic toroidal vortex. C and D, the equiphase representation of a Hopfion wave packet with different L2. The color denotes phase. Okay, the parameters are lambda 0, 800 nanometers, and so on, blah, blah, blah. Okay. What you're seeing is here in light what we do in cavitation and so forth. The difference in cavitation, it's actually easier relative to the non-dispersive and dispersive medium. Okay. R0 is considered, R0 is constant. So R0 is a constant that quantifies the radius in this equation of the toroidal vortex line L1 and L2 dash. They are the winding numbers that quantify the twist number of helicoid phases at the poloidal and toroidal plane, respectively. Figure 1a displays a 3D structure of a photonic toroidal vortex with L equals 0. Okay, so there's basically only poloidal motion and no Hopfions. Okay. which is a closed vortex line. Since L equals 0, the poloidal energy flow pattern is identical to that of a standard STOV. See sections S1 and 2. The average transverse OEM L1 and blah, blah, blah denotes the average as defined in blah, 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 blah. Equation 1 does... Right. Equation 1 describes the wave function of the scalar optical I'm getting tired now. Optical Hopfian, whose phase structure can be visualized as a torus formed by nested equiphase lines, as shown in Figure 1b2d. There we go, b2d. Okay. If this crashes, I'll bring it back. A toroidal vortex with L equals 0 simultaneously exhibits distinct energy flow governed by L1 and B2 in the poloidal plane, and swirl energy flow introduced by longitudinal orbital angular momentum in the toroidal plane. The poloidal flow dependent on dispersions interacts with the toroidal swirl, yielding a complex energy flow. To investigate the interplay between transverse and longitudinal orbital angular momentum in the dynamics of toroidal vortex, it is important to consider the balance regime of dispersion and diffraction. So here we're getting on to the virial theory, which you should look at. Have I got virial somewhere here? Maybe. Okay. In simulations, we use angular spectrum relation, see section S3, to numerically calculate the full space-time wave packet of toroidal vortices in dispersive medium. Figures 2 to 4a show the propagation dynamics of toroidal vortices without the longitudinal OEM under different dispersion cases. In all cases, the ring-shaped structure of the toroidal vortex collapses during propagation as a result of spatial diffraction within the toroidal plane. In contrast, for toroidal vortices carrying longitudinal OEM, the ring-shaped structure is preserved as shown in figures 2 to 4. Okay, so what are they talking about? Here, with a pure toroidal without orbital angular momentum, the ring-shaped structure is preserved, but it starts to collapse longitudinally. Okay. The difference arises from the fact that the longitudinal OEM induces a swirling flow in the toroidal plane, which helps preserve the ring-shaped structure. However, this swirling flow interacts with the poloidal flow, giving rise to more complex spatial dynamics, as will be discussed in detail below. In normally dispersive medium, so what is the difference between normally dispersive medium? Yeah, okay. In normally dispersive medium, the vortex line carried by the toroidal vortex without longitudinal OEM in figure 2a becomes stretched, finally causing it to split and peel off into two separated pieces in time. You actually see this in a normal smoke ring. So as a smoke ring is generated, it only has the poloidal rotation, but it doesn't have any multi-axis rotation. So you get this kind of tail coming behind. I've shown it in many, many different systems. Okay. The phase difference between the two pieces approaches pi near the Fisher break because of the saddle energy flow, blah, blah, blah. However, in figure 2b, the toroidal vortex with longitudinal orbital angular momentum initially breaks into two separate pieces over a short propagation distance. After that, the vortex line quickly reconstructs and the entire wave packet exhibits a well-defined toroidal structure. So, they're saying it breaks apart, but then it reconstructs, and then ultimately you end up with a toroidal type structure going on. Okay? And I believe it's because it's orthogonally organized. Okay? And I think it stands to reason when you actually look at these structures. If they break apart into two, then that ends up with like having a wheel within a wheel type thing. Okay. Anything else? Yeah. Figure 3 shows the dynamics of toroidal vortices propagating in an anomalously dispersive medium. For the toroidal vortex without longitudinal OEM, its poloidal energy flow shows a spiral pattern, and thus the entire morphology is preserved during propagation. However, the introduction of longitudinal OEM disturbs this stable regime. Okay. Anyway, so the long and the short of it is, and it's dependent on whether you're working in light or whether you're working in plasma or fluids. Depends on the type of fluid you're working in, whether it works in dispersive or non-dispersive medium to maintain its stability. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm getting quite tired now. I might have to call it a night in a second. Right, so I'm going to have a look at your questions. But basically, what I'm saying is you need to have a fractal toroidal geometry to produce the stability in certain mediums. And it also allows you to do vectorization. And that's all within the ARV. The ARV was able to create this back probably in the 1950s when I believe that was probably made. Let's have a look. Now I've got the ARV somewhere here. Okay. Yeah, so the ARV here. Yeah. Yeah, so the ARV absolutely has this effect here. When you understand how the electrodynamics works, you automatically understand why you have to have a staircase that goes up at this angle. Why the safe area here, because the magnetic field strength at this point is a very point field strength, and it's very, very, very intense. And I've just noticed that is that point there, right there. Okay. And you wouldn't want to be in the center line because you have this intense beam that goes through their gravitational vector. But when this is spun down, it can float above the ground exactly and precisely at this level, which means you can get into it without hurting yourself. You wouldn't want to get too close under here. You need to keep some distance from it. But they will fly like that for a period of time. But the 48 capacitor plates with the 8 subdivisions alternatively arranged allows you to split into 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 24 subdivisions to get anywhere between 24 and 24 and 2 subpairs. Of course, 4 is obviously in there, so is 6. So you can do this, and you can do your 4 structure, all of these kind of different things. And as is shown here in the Knights Hospitalier Castle, Grandmaster's Castle in Rhodos, in this ancient 4th century AD, potentially COS piece of stonework where we have 48 divisions, and they are yin-yang divisions, so exactly as you see in the anti-gravity craft here. So the fact that the masons come from this and they produce their Gorgon stair in the middle, of course it would be, allows you to understand what they're talking about here when they are, praise be to God, guardian of the secret. Out of chaos comes order. Yes. Right. Okay. Okay. So guys, I think that it's been a weird time for me since I guess since I was starting to think of these things in January 2016, and on June the 6th, in Constigliani di Asti, a very drunk CIA operative came down and sat next to me and said, "Bob, blah, 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 blah. Don't talk about, I've seen the anti-gravity craft, or rather my friends have seen the anti-gravity craft that the Americans have, but just don't talk about them. Don't talk about them. And then I wasn't allowed to give it a presentation at a conference in Boulder, Colorado at ICCF, and I found out that that was because they were worried I was going to talk about anti-gravity, and then I got specifically told not to talk about anti-gravity by email by a very senior person. There we go. And so that is what this is. And you know, there is a bubble of disclosure, and I'm so tired with how long this is taking. I mean, every single word I said, and directly to the people that I said that I was saying it to, which I was saying it to, they are the people that know this. And I was saying they're running out of time. And I think time's up. They're not disclosing, but they are disclosing. They are disclosing. And I can understand it. And even back in 2017, on March the 1st, you can go and see, I understood the mental torment they must be going through. Like, how can we roll any aspect of this technology out without revealing everything? Because it's all the same thing. As I've said for many years, it's all the same thing. And what you've got now is Russian and Chinese top tier researchers at the top level, publishing in the world's top journals, peer-reviewed journals, that these are the keys to all of the magic. Cloaking is just kind of like the easy one to talk about. But information transmission, energy transmission, they're kind of bordering on the outskirts of what probably is nice to discuss in polite company. And this will produce beams, bubbles of different space-time. And the pyramid itself literally encodes this. Yep, the gig's up, CBK Wahoo. The gig is up. So I'm going to go and have a quick look through, see if you've got any questions. Martin says, have you added an extra Visa Pisces within the Visa Pisces to your sacred geometry to reveal any other areas of the structure? All of the key aspects are there, and it comes out of fractality, and it also comes out of the toroidal moments and where they are, and the limit is 48. As shown in the Gorgon Stair stonework in Valletta. You know, the Cold War was signed in, I've said this before, in the throne room. So not in Valletta, that was in Rhodos. But the Cold War, the end of the Cold War was signed in the throne room in Valletta. And it just has Maltese crosses at the top, not Maltese crosses, the actual original Sumerian cross, the one that was on the Nazi flag, all over the ceiling, with two pillars either side of the chair, with a vortex and an anti-vortex. I mean, it's comical. It's just comical. It's so in your face. So Korkios says, question: how many years before this gets into actionable value-adding modalities? Well, we've talked about Griffin Brock's Tesla shadow graph, which is giving us ability to see through things. And I will talk about how this can allow for remediation of nuclear waste, I believe. And I believe I've done the initial work on that and proved it. But it needs verification, and I want to do a lot more experiments on that. The ability to bend laser light itself and to move some materials through fluids has applications straight away. the energy aspects of this and the transmutation aspects of this are immense. And so that's direct. But I think I think we're not too far off propulsion and anti-gravity. And I genuinely, honestly am telling you, I believe that we'll be able to make an anti-gravity craft out of a steam engine. I think it's possible. I know I laugh every time, but I think it's going to be possible. Yes, Halcato 770. Yes, the wheels within wheels within wheels are in the Bible, Ezekiel. Yeah, we're in Revelations. Forest Trouble says, will you soon begin making prototypes using these methods? The MFMP was only set up to try and find out what was going on in cold fusion, low energy nuclear reactions, what we now call coherent energy transformations. Understand, replicate, understand, educate, and help assist others to get their technology out. There's many people that have been following along this journey who are now empowered to get closer to understanding how to deliver functional technologies. The technology phase space, it's a huge, massive blue ocean of opportunity. It's just massive. Cavitation, obviously, I'm working with Binchuan Huang to deliver heat production and cavitation systems. I also want to work with Vladimir Zhigalov more on ordinary cavitation systems, and also we've got someone down in Australia on that. So cavitation heat, the wind hex for material processing, and maybe miniature versions of that. It's so many places to go that could use many lifetimes. But yeah, things are happening. Let's put it like that. Things are happening. Can you say brass tanks in the cathedral attic fed by gutters feeding the organ funnels? I've said it. Yeah, Atlanta Presking is saying no, dude, tax paid for it already. Yeah, I think so. I think this needs to be given to us and not hidden as pretend nuclear reactors providing energy. Yeah, Nathaniel Hanks, 11 good patents for seed enhancement via plasma. Yeah, I've talked about that in the past. And it's the same thing. I haven't seen Shaw Calderon's RIV. Sorry. Okay, so I'm just going to go through this quickly. This was O'Day bursting the bubble, the disclosure bubble. Before I say that, I just want to say thanks to everyone that donated today. So that is Black Tie, thank you very much. Scoggy, twice, Ranch Raken, and Bingus. Very, very much appreciated. Really helps. Okay. So, O'Day, bursting the disclosure bubble, 30th of November 2025. We reported news where we are replicating aspects of this technology and taking things forward. And I spoke about how the fractal toroidal geometry first was clarified by the Chilbonton Observatory crop circles that were ostensibly in response to the Arecibo message. And that there was a series of messages. One was from 2000, August. Following year, it became clear what that was all about because it became part of the message, August 2001. And in this one, there was an alien head over to the side. And then in the following year, at another microwave telescope facility next door, there was this one with an alien head this time, but this kind of compact disc vortex to a phase singularity with a spot in there. And beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. Believe there is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing or closed. So the scientists are naval intelligence or Navy researchers. And so there we go. And that's who they are. Or Defense Intelligence Agency people. So those are the people that apparently are not going to be deceiving us. Thank you very much, Martin B. Bartelson. That's very kind of you. Yeah, so are they going to be telling us? I don't know, but they talked about these warp bubbles, and we described how there's probably more information in here because we've got 3 swirls coming around this. 1 swirl around this for apex, 1 swirl around here, and 1 swirl around there. So 3 swirls. And also there's some chromatic aberrations going on these boundary areas here. I think there's more information encoded in here than it first seems. And we talked about the key properties here, different properties of space-time inside the bubble and outside the bubble, and the energy requirements that they claim needed here. I believe it all comes from the topological monopole that ends up like a kind of black hole that is able to create the virial state for the bubble so that it doesn't expand or collapse, and then you can manipulate the substructures within there to vector. The low observability, we've done that to death. That is done. We don't need to think about that again. We know why that occurs. It is because of the toroidal moment. And we showed these structures here, how this structure will give us teleportation. The orthorotation of one of the colleagues of these people, sadly departed, being Andrea Pucharish. How it would allow for hypersonic travel, explore new star systems. We went into observations similarly made in water and sparks as a ball lightning structure, which we broke down.
By Ed and Melinda Party. It shows the ball of light for about 20 seconds before it disintegrates.
And then we broke that down in reverse to say, look, if we're building this thing up, this is what we'd start off with. And then we build it up, the energy, they start to connect into each other. And then they immediately, after they've connected into each other, they go boom into a sphere, which then builds up to the non-radiating boundary. And we showed that that is absolutely correct as per the image clips. And I then show it on the video.
By Ed and Melinda Party. It shows the ball of light for about 20 seconds before it disintegrates.
Okay, so that is natural ball lightning. I believe that this is the best example of ball lightning that's ever been captured, and it shows all of the properties and is consistent with the fractal magnetohydrodynamic structure. And then I went to show the so-called propulsion field dynamics in here of the videos shared by Hal Puthoff, and that there are 3 of these in here, but then when you color adjust them and overlay the magnetohydrodynamics in here, it exactly matches both the substructures and the macro structure on the outside. The substructures, the inner circle here, which meets in the center, this in the fractal level is the non-radiating boundary of the subcore. And so we go through, show that with several images, how it exactly and correctly fits. So here you can see the outer boundary here in the negative, and I show it here. And then these are the subtors scaled to the correct size, and you can see they exactly and precisely fit over on the substructures. And it's a beautiful thing, it really is. And then I showed how Jack Valet and Bigelow and Hal Puthoff and this chap over here, Tim Ryan, they're all hanging around. This is August 1996. A lot of things were going on around this time. Eric Davis here. And in this image, we've got Russell Targ, who was the person that revealed that Hal Puthoff was US naval assets. We've got Philip Corso here that shared some of the things that were taken from the Nazi UFO that crashed, the UFO that crashed at Roswell. We've got George Knapp here and John Alexander here, Colonel John Alexander. And then here we have Uri Geller with Andrzej Puharich, and Uri Geller with Hal Puthoff, and that's Puharich's book on Uri Geller. And we also have our characters here with George Hathaway, who worked with John Hutchison. Okay, and we tie this with the work of Tom Bearden, rather. But it came down to this image for me, which was the highlight from Andrzej Puharich. And it wasn't just talking about disease manipulation by interference of scalar interferometry, but it was this image which struck me: the ELF bubble, the ELF 7.82 hertz, and the fact that this is the magnetohydrodynamic structure, and it's roughly correctly in the right place. So I went into his book and I found that he had this in here, and whilst this is lined up straight with here, it's not correct for giving you the pyramidal dimension, but in the book it shows that this azimuth through the center is the gravitational vector, as we have shown, and now we can do simple experiments that children can demonstrate in lower grade schools, along with cavitation transmutation experiments in the same kind of yin-yang sacred geometry type structures. I showed the standard way of producing this is actually when you take a Vesica Pisces produced by two circles, and you put two circles in there that are within the Vesica Pisces, and you draw from the flower part of the apple as the top of the triangle, and the baseline across the where the stalk goes into the apple, into basically the top and the bottom of the Vesica Pisces, and you draw that out to the intersection line, you get this 51.61 degrees, which is almost exactly the 51.59 average of the slope angles of Khufu and Menkaure pyramids. Khafre is quite a bit different on 53.167. It doesn't really match anyone's opinion. But together, the Khufu and Menkaure pyramids are almost identical to the construction that you get from this. Of course, I've talked about how the pyramid itself is not... Oh, and by the way, I want to reiterate that I believe that the reason they did this is not only that this is how nature works and how the pyramid works, it's also showing that it needs to be fractal. This is literally showing that it needs to be fractal. So there's so much information encoded in that particular choice that they've made. And so I showed that how every aspect of the Great Pyramid's operation, including the subterranean area, the descending passage, and the well, everything, and the non-radiating boundary, and the way it works, and the observation port, every aspect of this is because it is operating on this technology. I then showed a whole bunch of papers which show this in beautiful glory. I showed categorically that the toroidal moment is the thing that causes the cloaking effect and invisibility. So 100% we are correct about this, and it's been 8.5 years. Is it nearly 9 years? God, it's nearly nine years. Nearly 9 years. But finally, mainstream papers and this so-called disclosure is catching up, thankfully. And here we go. We've got all the toroidal dynamics you want, and showing how something that will lead... You get this by injecting helicity into a plasma, or by doing multi-axis shear in a gas or liquid fluid in like a thunderstorm generator, or in water cavitation, and you end up with the substructures forming that stabilize the overall structure, as we have literally seen in physical the plasma Vega experiments and in hydrodynamic water cavitation experiments like Ultra and the Huang work. Okay, so that is it. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you, Mookster, very kind of you, and Virtual Place, really, really appreciated, guys. Zork as well, thanks for the $10 there. Really, really appreciated. Okay, so that's it for me tonight. This was Ode bursting the disclosure bubble. Buenas noches, dobranoc, good night.